Hello, and welcome back to Zenin Fanfics. Today we're starting part 2 of an exciting new series, What If Deku Became a Girl? If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe for more content. The story we're featuring is written by aywashe on archiveofourown.org. You can find all the relevant links in the description, so be sure to check out the author's profile and say hello. Now, let's dive into the story. The air split with a deafening boom. Bakugo barely had time to brace before the shockwave hit. He was thrown back, body slamming against broken concrete as the force of All Might and All for One's clash cracked through the ruins like a bomb had gone off. He hit the ground hard, again, but forced himself up through the pain. Across from him, Shigaraki and the rest of the Vanguard Action Squad were also reeling, dust and debris settling around their sprawled forms. At the center of it all stood All Might, golden aura flaring wildly, locked in a brutal standoff with his ultimate nemesis. "I won't let you take him," All Might growled, his voice like thunder. "I won't let you destroy anyone else. Not again. Not like 5 years ago." His eyes locked on Bakugo. "I'm saving you. This time, I won't fail. I'll put all of you behind bars. Every last one." With a burst of power, he lunged forward, fists cocked with devastating purpose. All for One raised a hand calmly and unleashed hell. A massive blast wave surged from his palm, roaring like a hurricane and hitting All Might full force. The symbol of peace was blasted back, sent flying through several buildings in a shattering spiral of force and rubble. The sky lit up with dust and fire. Bakugo's breath hitched. All Might, the villain, stood tall amidst the chaos, his cloak rippling in the storm of his own making. "That blend," All for One murmured to himself, tilting his head. "Air cannon and spring-like limbs, quite the effective pairing. But I'll need to refine it. Add in a few reinforcement quirks to optimize the force curve." His mask turned slightly toward Bakugo. "Don't worry," he said with chilling calm. That wasn't enough to kill him. Bakugo's fists clenched. He didn't believe him, didn't trust him, but something in his voice, too confident, too calculating, sent a chill down Bakugo's spine. Then All for One turned to Shigaraki. "It's time to go. Take Bakugo and escape." From his fingers, black tendrils slithered out like vipers and plunged into Kurogiri's unconscious body. "What the hell are you doing?" Magnus shouted, recoiling. "Why not just use your war quirk? Why dig into Kurogiri like that?" All for One didn't even glance at her. "My warping quirk is not calibrated to assist your retreat," he said smoothly. "Only Kurogiri can get you all out safely." Bakugo tried to move, tried to bolt, but more tendrils whipped through the air, corralling him in place. He cursed under his breath, heart pounding. The warp gate began to form, swirling with that same black liquid he hated. But then, "I'm not done yet." The earth trembled. All Might reappeared, bursting from the rubble like a comet, his golden form blazing with righteous fury. His eyes locked onto All for One. "You're not escaping," he growled. "Not this time." All for One didn't flinch. He turned to Shigaraki one last time. "You still have room to grow," he said softly. "Don't forget that." Then he surged forward to meet All Might's final charge. Bakugo staggered back as All Might and All for One collided again, a storm of light and pressure tearing the air apart. His vision blurred for a split second, too much power in one space. But then something else crashed through the chaos. A wall behind the battlefield exploded outward in a spray of concrete and dust. "What the?" Three figures shot through the breach, fast and furious. Bakugo's eyes sharpened instantly, heart kicking hard in his chest as he recognized the blur of green electricity sparking through the air. Deku. Izuku Midoriya held on tight to Kirishima's arm, legs glowing with full cowl, muscles taut as coiled wire. On the other side, Ida's engines blazed with blue fire, Recipro burst screaming beneath him, and Todoroki with a showy ice. Sandwiched between them, Kirishima was fully hardened, like a crimson shield driving them forward. It all happened in seconds, then whoosh. Todoroki's ice erupted beneath them, forming a shimmering ramp into the sky like a frozen slingshot. And they launched. The trio soared upward, silhouettes slicing through the smoke-filled sky like missiles. Right above the war zone, right above him, Bakugo's breath caught in his throat. They were coming for him. He felt a rush of emotion surge in his chest. Rage, disbelief, and something that burned far deeper than pride. DM in it, he muttered, fists clenching. I told you not to come. Even now, even like this, she couldn't help herself. But as he watched Midoriya and the others fly through the sky, reckless and bright, something twisted in his gut. Not fear, not shame, something else. They weren't there to save him. They were fighting to stand with him. His pride screamed in protest, but his heart roared with fire. Bakugo's gaze snapped upward. The trio was closing in fast. Midoriya in the lead, sparks crackling down her limbs, Ida's engines flaring with blue fire, and Kirishima, solid as a rock, hand outstretched like a lifeline. And then All for One turned his head. A low hum filled the air. Danger. Bakugo saw the shift in the villain's stance, the way his massive arm drew back, energy distorting the space around it like a bomb about to go off. SHD, he's going to hit them. But before All for One could unleash the attack, smash. All Might slammed into him from the side, fist connecting with a titanic crack that split the sky. The force of it sent shockwaves through the battlefield, sending dust and debris cascading down like rain. Bakugo's eyes locked onto the trio, soaring above. They were close now, so close. And through the haze, he saw Kirishima reach out. Bakugo! Kirishima shouted. Take my hand. Bakugo grit his teeth, heart hammering. His muscles burned with the aftermath of the blast earlier, every instinct in him resisting the idea of being rescued. But Kirishima, he wasn't pleading. He wasn't coddling. He was offering. And Bakugo knew Deku wouldn't push it. Ida wouldn't force it. But Kirishima, he was the only one Bakugo would even consider trusting with this. That's when Shigaraki lunged. Pale fingers reached out, twisted in desperation, inches from Bakugo's shoulder. No! With a guttural roar, Bakugo turned, palm already sparking. His gauntlet was gone, but he didn't need it. The explosion ripped from his hand like a cannon, hurling him into the sky in a fiery arc. He felt the wind tear at his skin, the burn of the recoil across his back. Then, contact. His hand smacked into Kirishima's. Strong, steady, familiar. Bakugo grinned, sweat strkng his face. TCH, took you long enough, shitty hair. Kirishima laughed as he pulled him in. You're heavier than I remember. Bakugo didn't answer. But as the wind rushed past and the battlefield fell behind, he glanced at Midoriya, sparks crackling, eyes wide with worry. He didn't say thank you, but the smile said enough. The train station was quieter than it had any right to be. The air was still thick with tension, the kind that clings to your skin long after the battle's over. Bakugo sat on a metal bench, arms crossed, still scuffed with grime and dried BLD, but his breathing had evened out. His knee bounced, agitated, impatient, still wired. They pulled it off. As much as it pissed him off to admit, the idiots actually did it. His jaw clenched as he watched Midoriya pacing nearby, holding her phone to her ear. Her costume was torn up, face bruised, hair matted with sweat and soot. But her voice, calm, controlled, that annoyingly earnest tone still intact. Todoroki-kun, you made it out. Thank God. Is Momo with you? A pause, relieved sigh. I'm glad. We're at the train station. Everyone's safe. Yeah, I think we can call it a success. Bakugo looked away, scowling. Success, huh? The word tasted bitter. His pride was still bleeding, ego bruised raw. Being the one who needed to be saved, being the DMN target, he hated it. Hated the feeling of being helpless, but worse. Worse was how close everything had come to falling apart. He flexed his fingers, remembering the moment Shigaraki reached for him. If he hadn't blasted away, if Kirishima hadn't, TCH. He glanced at the others. Midoriya hung up the call and turned toward him, green eyes soft and tired, but relieved. Ito was checking in with the station guards, keeping his usual stiff composure. Kirishima, he just sat across from him, arms resting on his knees, watching Bakugo with a quiet sort of concern he didn't voice. No one said anything about thanks, or how reckless it was, or how stupid Bakugo was for not waiting for a proper rescue. Good. They knew better. Still, it gnawed at him how close it had come, how weak he'd felt, but they were all alive. And for now, that was enough. Dim extras, he muttered, more to himself than anyone. Better not expect me to start crying or some SHD. Kirishima smirked from his seat. Wouldn't dream of it. Bakugo clicked his tongue and leaned back, eyes drifting to the sky beyond the platform. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But for tonight, they'd won. The low rumble of the train in the distance gave them a few minutes of quiet. Bakugo had his arms folded, scowl etched on his face like it was chiseled in. Kirishima leaned back beside him on the bench, casually kicking his legs out, not saying much. Just sitting there, being chill, which meant he definitely had something to say. Bakugo narrowed his eyes. You've been quiet too long. Spit out already. Kirishima blinked, then gave a small, guilty grin. Figured you'd blow up at me no matter when I said it. That depends, Bakugo said, twitching. Is it stupid? Well, Kirishima rubbed the back of his neck. I figure I should be honest. While you were in villain hands and she was recovering in a hospital, I kissed Midoriya. Bakugo's entire body tensed like someone had just pulled a pin on a grenade. It seemed like his body was heavier now than he was chained up in the hideout earlier. You what? Kirishima held his hands up fast. Forehead. Just the forehead. It wasn't like that. I told her to take care of herself before she decided anything crazy. It was more like encouragement. Bakugo stared at him like he'd just admitted to punching All Might. But Bakugo shouldn't make a big deal out of it, right? You kissed Deku. On the forehead. Why, yeah. Why the hell would you even tell me that, you rock-brain dumbass? Kirishima winced but didn't stop grinning. You're the only one who'd actually react, man. Ida just scolded me about boundaries, and Todoroki blinked like he didn't know what emotions were. Bakugo looked away sharply, jaw tight. His foot started tapping again, faster this time. You're all idiots, he muttered. Kirishima gave him a sideways glance. You mad? I'm pissed you're making it a thing, that's all. His voice dropped lower tight. It didn't mean anything, right? Kirishima blinked, then smiled softer. No, I mean not like that. I just wanted her to know she wasn't alone. Bakugo let out a sharp exhale through his nose. Oomph. For a long second, he didn't say anything. Then, she's still an idiot for throwing herself into that rescue. Kirishima grinned wider. And you're an idiot for smiling when you grab my Hamadare. Shut up before I punch you through the next train. Yeah. They sat in silence again, the buzz of the station folding around them. But the tension had shifted, lighter now. And though Bakugo's glare hadn't softened, his foot had finally stopped tapping. He didn't say it out loud, but somewhere deep down, the fact that she'd come for him anyway. It burned hotter than any explosion he could make. Midoriya stood there, her gaze fixed on the giant screen above the station. Kirishima was practically glowing with relief, his grin wide and full of energy, now that Bakugo was safe. He was happy, and it was clear to anyone who saw him. But Midoriya couldn't share that same sense of joy, not entirely. Her heart still felt heavy with the weight of their choices. Bakugo was safe, yes, but the battle was far from over. On the screen, All Might and All for One clashed again, their power rippling through the air and shaking the screen with each hit. Midoriya clenched her hands, her fingers trembling a little. Did we do the right thing? Her mind kept replaying the same question over and over. Did we leave All Might to fight on his own because we were scared? It wasn't that she didn't believe in All Might. She did. He was the symbol of peace. He had been their pillar of strength for so long. But could they have done more? Could they have helped somehow? She exhaled shakily, feeling the familiar weight of her new body, a body that was still difficult to get used to. The changes in her shape weren't just physical. Her balance fell off at times, and every time she moved, she could feel her chest and hips throwing her off. She couldn't lie to herself. It made moving through certain spaces more challenging. It frustrated her, but it was something she was learning to deal with. But right now, her body felt like a constant reminder that things were far from normal. Kirishima caught her in his wide smile. "You okay, Deku? You're looking a little serious there. We did it, right? Bakugo's safe now." His hand slapped her back with a cheer. Midoriya tried to smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. She trailed off, glancing over at the screen where All Might was taking another hit from All for One. "I can't help but wonder if we should have stayed. I mean, All Might's fighting on his own. What if we could have done something?" Kirishima raised his eyebrows, but before he could respond, Bakugo grunted from beside them, his usual scowl plastered on his face. "TCH, are you seriously going to sit around questioning your decision? We made the call. All Might has this." "I get it, Kakin," Midoriya responded, turning to face him, her voice quieter than usual. "But he can't fight alone forever. What happens when he gets overwhelmed? What happens when it's too much?" Kirishima nudged her lightly, his voice steady but reassuring. "Midoriya, look, All Might's the hero. He's the one who's been taking down the big villains forever. We still got time to get stronger. For now, we did what we could. Katsuki's safe, and that's a win." Midoriya sighed, looking back up at the screen. She wanted to believe that. She really did. But there was always that little piece of doubt in her chest. The battle raged on, All Might pushing back against All for One's relentless attacks. Despite her doubts, Midoriya knew this was his fight. He was the symbol of peace. But was it enough? Just then, Kirishima's voice broke through her thoughts. "Hey, look at that. The fight's still going strong on the big screen." Midoriya's eyes snapped back to the broadcast, watching as All Might was sent flying by another wave of force from All for One. Her heart skipped a beat. He was taking the brunt of it all. Bakugo was quieter now, his arms crossed, staring at the screen as well. "TCH, that BSDRD still can't go down, huh?" Midoriya couldn't help but nod. "He's fight." She felt a tug at her chest as she glanced at Bakugo again, knowing he must have felt something similar to her. Even if he would never admit it, he cared. It wasn't just about All Might winning. It was about everyone getting through this. Together, her thoughts wandered back to the battle. Could they have done more? Would they? She pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the here and now. They had a victory to savor. For now, they needed to hold on to what they could. All Might's got this, Kirishima added again, his optimism unwavering. "We just gotta trust him." Midoriya took a deep breath, forcing a smile. "Yeah, he'll pull through. He always does." As the battle between All Might and All for One reached its final crescendo, the ground beneath them seemed to tremble, shaking with the sheer force of their clash. Every blow was a thunderous shockwave. Each impact felt through the air as if the very world itself were holding its breath. All Might, battered but still unyielding, pushed forward with everything he had left. His punches were fueled by years of being the symbol of peace, by the lives he had saved and the hope he had instilled in countless hearts. Yet, even the greatest hero couldn't hold back forever. With one last mighty punch, All Might finally drove All for One to his knees, his power a brilliant flash of light, a last desperate burst of strength. All for One struggled, groaning in pain, but it was too late. The battle had ended. Endeavor and All Might watch All for One being placed in the Iron Maiden. Now that All for One is properly imprisoned, the citizens watching from their homes cheered, their faith in All Might renewed, as if they could feel the end of the war had come. All Might stood tall, though the weight of his injuries and the years of battle had taken their toll. He took a deep, shuddering breath, his body trembling from the effort, but his voice, still strong, still resonating, rang out. He pointed directly at the camera, his gaze unwavering, his eyes locking onto the millions watching across the nation. "Next, it's your turn," he said, his voice clear despite the exhaustion. His words were more than a call to action. They were passing of the torch. The citizens erupted in joy, their praise for All Might reaching deafening levels. They cheered for their hero, for the man who had saved them all. The streets were alive with celebration, fireworks exploding in the distance, music and cheers filling the air. But as the camera pulled back to show the jubilant scene, Izuku stood frozen in the crowd, his eyes wide and his breath caught in his chest. Her heart pounded, but it wasn't from the excitement of the celebration. Her gaze was fixed on the screen, on All Might's smiling face. Her mind raced, the meaning behind those words crashing over him like a tidal wave. All Might's time it was over. He can't use one for all anymore. Izuku's hands trembled at his sides, and before he could stop himself, tears began to fall. They rolled down her cheeks in a silent stream, hot against the cool of his skin. Her chest felt tight, his heart aching in a way that he couldn't explain. He hadn't fully understood until this moment. All Might wasn't just passing the torch to the next generation. He was gone. The One for All legacy would never be the same. The hero who had protected this world for so long, who had inspired millions, would no longer be the one to stand against the darkness. Izuku wiped at his face, but the tears kept coming. He could hear Kirishima's voice in the background, excited and jubilant, but all Izuku could focus on was the emptiness that now surrounded All Might. She hadn't known what it would be like, how it would feel to see his hero at the end of his journey. All Might had always been so strong, so invincible in her eyes, a constant beacon in a world of chaos. And now he was finished. Izuku's chest heaved as she tried to steady her breathing. Her eyes focused on the screen once again, watching as All Might's figure slowly faded into the distance. The citizens celebrated, but Izuku couldn't bring herself to feel the same way. The message All Might had left behind, his declaration that it was now their turn, made Izuku realize something else. She was next in line. The weight of it all was too much, and as she stood there, surrounded by her classmates and the growing noise of the celebration, she couldn't hold back the sobs any longer. All Might had saved them all for so long, but now it was her turn to carry on his legacy. The glow of the screen still lingered in Midoriya's mind as the group finally began to move again. Her hands were still trembling slightly, but she forced herself to focus. There wasn't time to break down, not now. Not while there were still things to do. Katsuki walked ahead of them, arms crossed, jaw tight. He hadn't said much since the escape. Not a thank you, not a word of concern. Typical. But Midoriya could see the tension in his shoulders, the same kind she'd seen in the hospital mirror, etched into her own reflection. At the police checkpoint, officers were already waiting. Dozens of them, some bandaged, some armed, and all looking tired. As Bakugo stepped forward, one of the officers saluted him with uncharacteristic solemnity. "You did well holding out, kid," the officer said gruffly. Bakugo scowled but didn't protest. "TCH, I would have broken out on my own anyway." Midoriya and the others gave their statements briefly. Ida handled most of it with his usual sense of order and responsibility, while Kirishima hovered nearby, casting sidelong glances at Bakugo like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. Momo quietly offered clarification where needed. It felt strange, detached, almost, to be standing here like everything was normal, when the world had just shifted under their feet. As the officers took Bakugo to a nearby patrol car, not under arrest, but for protection, he glanced back. Just a flicker of his eyes, a spark of something unspoken. Midoriya met it with her own. She didn't smile. Neither did he. But in that brief moment, there was an understanding, a quiet one. When the patrol car pulled away, Kirishima exhaled deeply, rubbing the back of his neck. "Man, that was intense." "Indeed," Ida said, adjusting his glasses. "But we completed the mission, more or less." "Without fighting," Momo added softly. "Just like we promised." They started walking. No one said much at first. The streets were beginning to quiet down, the post-battle chaos slowly settling into something closer to peace. The adrenaline was wearing off, and in its place came exhaustion. Midoriya walked a little behind the group, arms wrapped around herself. The wind caught in her short, messy hair, and she tugged her jacket tighter. Her body still ached in places, and her thoughts were loud, too loud. All Might was done. Kaken was safe, and now it was her turn. She glanced up at the sky as they crossed an intersection. The stars were out, faint, scattered, but visible, and somehow, in the stillness, it felt like they were watching too. They walked until the streetlights guided them home. The apartment door creaked open as Izuku stepped inside, the familiar scent of home wrapping around her like a blanket. Her limbs felt heavy, her chest still tight from everything that had happened. She barely managed to toe off her shoes before. Izuku. Her mother's voice came sharp and fast, and then Inko was rushing down the hall in her pajamas, eyes wide and brimming with tears. "Oh my God, baby. I'm okay, Mom," Izuku said quickly, lifting her hands. "I'm fine. Really?" Inko stopped in front of her, hands hovering over Izuku's shoulders as if unsure whether to hold her or not. "You're not okay. You were in the middle of that whole thing. I saw you on news, I thought." Her voice cracked. "I thought you were going to—" "I didn't fight," Izuku interrupted softly. "We just rescued Kaken. We were careful, I promise." Her mother stared at her for a moment, then pulled her into a fierce hug anyway. Izuku stiffened at first, her bruises still fresh, but then melted into it. The warmth of her mother's arms, the heartbeat beneath her ear, it was the safest she'd felt in days. "I'm just glad you're home," Inko whispered. "You're home." Izuku nodded against her shoulder. "I'm sorry I didn't call sooner. You're here now." Inko pulled back, brushing green bangs from her daughter's face. "Go get some sleep, sweetheart. We'll talk in the morning, okay?" "Okay," Izuku murmured. She made her way down the hall, pushing her bedroom door open. The room looked exactly the same as she'd left it, but somehow smaller, like she'd grown too much for it in just one night. Peeling off her jacket, she dropped it over her chair, then climbed into bed. The moment her head hit the pillow, her body gave out completely. The ache in her muscles, the weight in her heart, it all sank deep into the mattress. She curled on her side, staring at the wall, her mind a quiet storm of images. Explosions, black portals, Kaken's smirk, All Might's final stand, and that final message, meant only for her. "Next, it's your turn." Izuku closed her eyes and slept. The room was silent, lit only by the faint glow of the moon seeping through her curtains. Izuku had been drifting somewhere between sleep and dreams when the sharp buzz of her phone cut through the stillness. She groaned softly, reaching over with a sluggish arm to grab it from the nightstand. The screen read, "All Might." Her heart kicked up. She sat up quickly, eyes clearing as she pressed accept. "All Might." His voice was quiet, heavy. "Young Midoriya, I'm sorry to call so late." Izuku immediately straightened in bed. "It's okay. I wasn't really sleeping yet." There was a pause. "Could you meet me?" he asked. "At the beach. The place where we trained." Izuku blinked. That beach. The one still etched into her memory, where the old her and the hero she was becoming first began to merge. "Yeah, I'll be there soon." "Thank you." The call ended. Izuku stared at the screen for a moment longer before slipping out of bed, her tiredness replaced by something else, something quieter but heavier. She dressed quickly, pulled on a hoodie, and tiptoed out of the apartment with a quiet note left for her mother on the kitchen counter. The city was hushed at this hour, streets empty, shadows stretched along. She walked quickly, each step crunching softly on the sidewalk until she reached the familiar path. The beach appeared before her like a ghost from the past. Quiet waves, the moonlight shimmering over sand. And there he was, waiting, tall, worn, human, not as All Might, the symbol of peace, but as Tashinori Yagi, her mentor. Izuku stepped onto the sand, wind catching in her hair. "I'm here." He turned when she approached, and his eyes, though tired, were sharp. "Young Midoriya," he said, and for a second, there was something almost unreadable in his voice. Before Izuku could respond, he stepped forward and punched her lightly in the shoulder. Not enough to hurt, but enough to make her stumble back a step. "What were you thinking?" he barked, the reprimand snapping through the cool night air. Izuku flinched. I told you to stay out of it," he interrupted, eyes flashing with that rare old intensity. "You're my successor, not a martyr. That battlefield was no place for a student, and especially not for you. Not when you were already hurt." His shoulders trembled slightly from the force of his words. Then he coughed hard, clutching his side. His skeletal form shuddered. All Might. Izuku reached out instinctively, worry overtaking her guilt. I'm fine, he rasped. But I'm done. Officially. She froze. I used everything I had left in that last punch, All Might said, lifting his gaze to meet hers. I can't even hold the form for more than a few seconds now. That was the last time All Might will ever fight. Silence stretched between them, heavy and thick. Izuku looked down, her hands clenched at her sides. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I wasn't supposed to, but I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Not when it was Kakin. Tashinori sighed. You're just like me, he murmured. Before she could ask what he meant, he reached forward and pulled her into a hug, tight and trembling and full of everything he couldn't put into words. I was furious, he said in her hair. But then I saw you, all of you safe, and I felt nothing but pride. You saved him. You made it back. You were brave. Izuku's breath caught in her throat. You're growing up too fast, he said with a small laugh, pulling back to look at her. Even if your body's changed, even if everything feels upside down right now, I know who you are. He placed a thin hand over her heart. You're still Midoriya Izuku, the same kid who cried over All Might videos. The same kid who leapt in to save a boy from a villain without thinking. The same young hero who wants to save everyone with a smile. Her lip trembled, eyes stinging again. I'm sorry I worried you, she said. But I'm still me. I won't forget that. I know you won't. All Might smiled, tired but warm. And now it's your time. I can't fight anymore, but I'll stand behind you every step of the way. The tide rolled in, washing the sand clean. And beneath the moonlight, mentor and student stood side by side. One at his end, the other just beginning. It was the following day when All Might visited their apartment. I'd already sent a letter explaining everything. The dorm system, the plan to move the students for their safety. So Izuku and her mom were expecting a conversation, just not like this. All Might came alone. Izuku could barely sit still. Her heart was racing. All Might, in their home, drinking tea with her mom. He looked so big in their small living room. He glanced around quietly, his eyes pausing on her posters, the All Might action figures, the scribbled notebooks filled with hero notes. It was embarrassing, but also kind of nice. Then her mom spoke. I'm pulling Izuku out of you, eh? The words hit like a punch to the chest. Izuku froze. I watched my child come home with broken bones and burns, Inko said, voice trembling. She idolizes you, and I'm terrified it's going to get her killed. Izuku couldn't speak. She stood up and hurried to her room, thoughts spiraling. Her chest felt tight. She thought back to the battles, the pain, the time she'd smiled through cracked ribs just so her mom wouldn't worry. She hadn't really listened to her mom's fears, not until now. Inside her room, she stood there for a moment, staring at the walls covered in All Might memorabilia. The weight of everything crashed down on her all at once. All Might's retirement, her injuries, the pressure of one for all, and now this. A quiet sob escaped her before she wiped her eyes and dug into her drawer. She came back holding Koda's letter. I saved someone, she said quietly. Even if I didn't have a hero license or a fancy title. Even like this, she glanced down at her body, still not quite used to it. I still did what I had to do. That's what heroes do. All Might stood. Then, without a word, he transformed into his muscle form and bowed low. I've let harm come to your daughter. I failed to protect her, he said, voice deep and steady. But I believe in her. I believe she can be the next symbol of peace. His form flickered back to normal. He looked tired, but full of resolve. I promise to guide her, not down a bloodied path, but to a future where she can stand tall. I'll give everything I have to help her become the hero she's meant to be. Inko's breath caught. Then she dropped to her knees, tears spilling. Live, All Might. Live, and be there for her. I will, he said softly. She turned to Izuku and held her hand tight. Go back, but promise me you won't make me cry like this again. I promise, Izuku whispered, voice shaking. I'll get stronger. I'll make you proud. This time, they faced the future together. Izuku sniffled and smiled through her tears as her mom hugged her again, tighter this time, as if trying to make up for every worry and sleepless night. Later that evening, She found herself back in her room, suitcase half-packed and clothes scattered like confetti. She folded her uniform with practice care, slipped her notebooks into the side pocket, and paused as she picked up a faded All Might keychain. She smiled faintly, clutching in her hand before clipping it to the zipper. A knock came at the door. "Come in," she said, brushing hair out of her face. Her mom peeked in, holding a small laundry basket of freshly folded socks and underwear. "I brought the rest of your—" "Oh wow, this room is a war zone. It's organized chaos," Izuku muttered, stuffing a hoodie into the bag. "Control disaster. Totally under control." Inko walked in, placed the laundry on the bed, and then just hovered. Izuku could feel it. That mom energy. Something was coming. Sure enough, Inko sat down slowly, her fingers fidgeting in her lap. "Sweetie," she began far too gently. "Now that you're, a girl." Izuku froze mid-sock roll. "Oh, okay. I just think it's important we have a little talk. About boys." Izuku's face lit up bright red. "And Mom." No, listen, it's different now." Inko pressed on, suddenly in full embarrassing mom mode. "I mean, you've always been cute, but now you're adorable, and teenage boys are like cats around tuna. You need to be careful. Don't fall for the first handsome face you see just because he says something nice like, 'You smell like flowers,' or 'Your eyes sparkle like Midoriya rain.' That's not even a thing." Izuku wailed, hiding her face in a sweatshirt. "It is now." Inko pointed dramatically. "I raise you to be strong, kind, and smart, not to get distracted by chiseled jawlines and six-packs, okay? No kissing during training. No secret midnight rendezvous under stars. And if Bakugo even looks at you the wrong way, call me. I will come running." Izuku groaned into the pile of clothes. "This is worse than facing Stain." Inko sniffled dramatically. "I knew this would happen. PBRTY just switched teams, and now I'm back at square one. I am not having this conversation." Izuku squeaked. But even as she said it, she was smiling again, really smiling. Her mom was being ridiculous, but it made her feel normal, grounded. Like the world hadn't completely turned upside down. Like home would always be here, even as she stepped into the unknown. Inko stood and smoothed her daughter's hair gently. "I'm proud of you, Izuku. Now, go be amazing. Just, with chaste heroism." "No promises," Izuku mumbled under her breath, earning a gasp of betrayal. She zipped her suitcase with a grin and slung her backpack over one shoulder. It was time to go home. To UA. To herself. To the future. It should have felt exciting. Moving into their new dorms. A fresh start after everything that happened. That's what UA intended. But as Class 1A stood outside the newly built Heights Alliance, lined up in neat little rows with luggage at their feet, the air felt heavier than any of them expected. Midoriya stood among them, heart beating just a little faster. She recognized the look on Aizawa-sensei's face. It wasn't just tired, it was disappointed, and that always hit harder than anger. "This dormitory will be your new home," he began, voice steady. "You'll be living under supervision going forward. This is a precaution, not a reward." Some of the students exchanged glances, but most stayed quiet. Midoriya kept her eyes forward. "But before I go over how this will work," Aizawa said, pausing just long enough to make her stomach twist, "we need to talk about what happened during the training camp." Her fingers tightened at her sides. "You were supposed to earn your provisional hero licenses there. That opportunity was lost when the League of Villains attacked." Midoriya didn't miss the subtle shift. How Kaminari's shoulders slumped. How Uraraka's lips parted like she wanted to say something but didn't. They were all still holding on to what they didn't get. The licenses. The normalcy. And yet, Aizawa continued, "Some of you acted like you had them anyway." The moment his voice changed, she knew what was coming. Todoroki, Kirishima, Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, Ida. The names fell like stone. Her name, her friends, their secret dragged into the open. "I know what you did. I know you left campus, tracked the League, and went to rescue Bakugo." Gasps echoed, a chorus of disbelief. "You what?" Mina shrieked. "You seriously continued to that plan?" Siro whispered. Midoriya didn't move. She didn't look at anyone. She could feel the weight of their eyes, the swirl of betrayal and awe in the air. She didn't blame them. Aizawa wasn't done. It was reckless, dangerous. You had no authority, no license, and no backup. But no one died. Your efforts were buried, covered up. He exhaled slowly. But aside from Bakugo, Hagakure, and Jiro, the rest of you knew. You didn't stop them. You didn't say a word. Another silence, heavier than before. Guilt began spreading through the crowd like smoke. Midoriya could feel it, on her skin, in her chest. If All Might hadn't retired, Aizawa said, voice like steel, I would have expelled every single one of you. You betrayed the rules we built this school on. She felt her heart squeeze. Then he turned back to her group, the 5 of them who had disobeyed, who had done what they thought was right. Todoroki, Kirishima, Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, Ida, you acted to save your friend, and I won't say that wasn't admirable. But next time, go through the proper procedures. Trust must be rebuilt by following the law you're training to uphold. Midoriya swallowed hard. She nodded once, hand curled at her side. She could feel Ida beside her doing the same. Aizawa stepped aside. That's all. Go inside. No one moved. They just stood there, stunned, like they were waiting for someone to breathe for them. Then a familiar voice broke the silence. Hey, idiot! Zap! Electricity cracked through the air. Kaminari spasmed dramatically. Gwahaha! His eyes went wide and blank, tongue lolling out like a cartoon character. Bakugo stood behind him, arms crossed, glaring like he hadn't just turned his classmate into a walking battery leak. You all looked like you were about to cry, he muttered. So I fixed it. Jiraiya snorted. You electrocuted him. I feel electricity and friendship, Kaminari murmured, swaying like a zombie. Laughter rippled through the crowd, first tentative then real. Even Midoriya couldn't help a little laugh bubbling up through her chest. For a second, it felt like before. Then Kirishima stepped forward. He rubbed the back of his neck, cheeks pink. I messed up. I thought I was being manly, doing what a hero's supposed to do. But I forgot. Heroes don't act alone. We're supposed to have each other's backs. So, he turned to Bakugo, and Bakugo held out cash. Paying you back for the night vision scope. Bakugo interrupted Kirishima. Kirishima hesitated, but took it without argument. Kirishima looked back at the class. I'll make it up to you guys. Seriously. Barbecue's on me this weekend. Meat, soda, all of it. I owe you at least that much. There was a beat. Yes. Mina cheered. We accept your apology. Zero added. Grill forgiveness. Kaminari drooled. Laughter erupted again, louder this time, brighter. Midoriya watched it all with a soft smile, the tension slowly fading from her shoulders. Things still weren't perfect. They had a long way to go, but maybe, just maybe, they'd be okay. Midoriya let out a breath as she collapsed onto her freshly made bed, the springs creaking softly beneath her. Her dorm room was simple but cozy. Walls bare for now, her All Might blanket folded neatly at the foot of the bed, notebooks stacked in one corner, each one filled with observations and battle notes. A few photos were pinned up, her mom, her class, Ida, and Ochako at the sports festival. It didn't quite feel like home yet, but it didn't feel like either. She exhaled again, deeper this time. The confrontation with Aizawa-sensei still echoed in her head. Everyone's reactions, the disappointment, the guilt. A knock at the door made her jolt upright. She scrambled to her feet, brushing off her skirt. See, come in. The door cracked open. Uraraka peeked in. Hey, Deku, you, got a minute? Midoriya blinked, then nodded quickly. Yeah, of course. Come in. Uraraka stepped inside, glancing around at the room with a warm little smile. Wow, it really is your room. Feels like you. All Might blanket and everything. Midoriya rubbed the back of her neck, blushing. Why, yeah, I guess I'm kind of predictable. There was a pause. Then Uraraka sat on the edge of the bed, her smile fading just a little. So that whole thing, what Aizawa-sensei said. Midoriya looked down, fidgeting with her hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to drag everyone into it. I couldn't let Kaken be taken. And when I saw that everyone, was upset or suspicious, I thought maybe you tried to stop us, or worse, come with us. And I couldn't risk that. Uraraka didn't respond right away. Then softly I was mad. Midoriya flinched. I was mad because I knew something was up. I watched you all sneak around, whispering, making plans. And I didn't say anything. Because part of me understood, and part of me wanted to go with you. She looked up, eyes shining a little. But seeing you come back safe, seeing how close it all was, it scared me, Deku. Really scared me. Midoriya's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Uraraka shook her head. I'm not saying this to make you feel worse. I just wanted you to know how I felt, and that I'm still your friend. Midoriya's eyes widened. Even after, Uraraka gave a half laugh. You saved Bakugo without getting yourself killed. That's kind of incredible. And very you. I'm still mad, but I'm also proud. Midoriya smiled just a little. Her eyes shimmered. Thanks, Uraraka. There was a pause. Then Uraraka raised a brow. So what's it like? Midoriya blinked. What's what like? Uraraka leaned in with a mischievous glint in her eyes. So, you're a girl now, and you saved Bakugo again. Be honest, did he act different? I bet he was trying so hard not to smile. Midoriya went bright red. You Uraraka. She snorted. What? Come on, I saw his face when you showed up. Dude looked like someone turned off his rage mode. It wasn't like that. Midoriya stammered, clutching the strap of her sling tighter. He was just surprised. That's all. Oh, please, Uraraka said, waving her hand. Bakugo's been weirdly chill around you ever since he changed. Like, not yelling every 5 seconds. That's practically flirting for him. Midoriya's jaw dropped. He is not. I mean, that's not. Uraraka burst into giggles, holding up her hands. I'm kidding. Mostly. Midoriya groaned, burying her face in her good hand. It's different. Complicated. Confusing. I still don't really know how long it'll last, or if I'll ever go back to normal. Uraraka tilted her head. Does that bother you? I don't know, Midoriya said softly. Some things feel harder, but others feel easier in a strange way. People treat me differently. He treats me differently. That's not necessarily a bad thing, Uraraka said gently, her teasing smile fading into something more thoughtful. Maybe it's just letting you both see things clearer. Midoriya didn't answer right away. She just stared out the window, heart doing a strange little flutter. Then her grin returned, sly and sharp. And it's not just him either. Midoriya blinked. What? Please, Uraraka said, nudging her. Todoroki's been sticking to you like Velcro. You didn't notice. What? No, he hasn't. Midoriya squeaked, flustered. He has, Uraraka sang. Since you changed, he's been a lot more present. Like standing a little closer, talking a little more, watching a lot more. Midoriya's brain went blank. He's just worried. About Bakugo. About the mission. About Imichin. Uraraka hummed. He's worried with a little hard eyes emoji energy. Midoriya hid her face again. You're the worst. I'm your best friend, she corrected smugly. And I'm just saying, if you ever need backup navigating the hot boy triangle you've accidentally walked into, I've got charts. I am not in a triangle. Sure, Uraraka said, patting her shoulder. Just keep me posted when Todoroki finally holds your hand or Bakugo tries to kill him for it. I hate everything you're saying right now. Midoriya red as a tomato, but she was smiling because maybe, just maybe, it wasn't all that far-fetched. Uraraka's teasing faded into something more thoughtful. Well, for what it's worth, you're still you. And you're doing great. Midoriya's heart warmed. Thanks. They sat in silence for a few seconds before Uraraka clapped her hands. Anyway, come on. We're all gathering in the lounge in a bit. Ciro said something about a soda tower, and Kaminari's already stacking cans. Midoriya stood, smiling. Sounds like them. As they stepped out into the hallway together, side by side, the dorm suddenly felt a little less strange, and a little more like home. Midoriya and Uraraka strolled side by side down the hallway toward the dorm elevator, the soft thud of their steps echoing against the quiet. The tension of the day had eased a little, And even though Midoriya still felt the weight of Aizawa's words clinging to her shoulders, she was starting to breathe easier. Until he showed up. Oi! They both stopped. The word cut sharp and low, like gravel ground underfoot. Bakugo stood just ahead of them, leaning against the wall near the elevator with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. His red eyes flicked toward Uraraka briefly before locking on Midoriya. I need to talk to you. Midoriya blinked. Ow. Yeah, you got ears, don't you? Uraraka frowned, already stepping a bit protectively in front of Midoriya. You sure this? Can't wait, Bakugo. She just got settled in. It's not your business, round face. Uraraka scowled. What did you just? Midoriya gently put a hand on her shoulder. It's okay. I'll catch up with you. Uraraka hesitated, clearly unconvinced. Her gaze lingered on Bakugo for a beat, narrowed with suspicion. Fine, but don't yell at her, got it? TCH. As Uraraka walked away, throwing one last pointed glare over her shoulder, Midoriya turned to face Bakugo, already feeling that familiar mix of anxiety and curiosity fluttering in her chest. He didn't move, didn't even uncross his arms, just stared at her like she was something he hadn't figured out yet, and didn't like that he hadn't. You changed. Midoriya blinked. Well, yeah, that's sort of, obvious. I don't mean that, he snapped. I mean you. You're different. She flinched. Because of the Quirk accident. No, because of how you acted back there. At Kamino. Her breath hitched. I saw what you did. I know it was your demon idea. Midoriya looked down, fingers curling into her sleeves. I had to. They were taking you, and I didn't ask to be saved by a bunch of idiots sneaking around like vigilantes. She bit her lip. I know. There was a pause. Long tense. But you still came. Midoriya glanced up, startled. His tone wasn't bitter this time. Just resigned. You almost died. You almost got everyone killed. But you still came. She nodded, heart thudding. That's what heroes do, she whispered. Bakugo studied her, jaw clenched. His eyes flicked briefly down to her, then away again, like looking at her too long might set something off inside him. Don't do that again, he muttered. Next time, ask. Next time, trust people. Don't shoulder everything and act like some martyr. Midoriya blinked, eyes wide. That almost sounded like advice. Or maybe worry. Kakin. He looked away. And don't think this changes anything. You're still a nerd. Just a girl nerd now. She laughed. A short, surprised burst that caught even her off guard. Okay. He gave her a sharp glance, then pushed past her toward the elevator. I'm going to the lounge. If you're late, I'm eating your snacks. Wah. Hey. But he didn't wait. The elevator doors closed behind him, leaving her standing there with a fluttering heart and a bemused smile. Maybe Bakugo wasn't ready to say what he really felt, but she heard him anyway. Midoriya caught the next elevator down, adjusting her sleeves nervously as it hummed to a stop on the common room floor. She could already hear the noise before the doors slid open. Laughter, clinking cans, and Kaminari's voice shouting something about structural integrity. She stepped into the lounge just in time to see Kaminari and Ciro precariously balancing a stack of soda cans, glued together with Minetta's sticky purple hairballs. Behold, Ciro declared, arms raised dramatically. The great tower of grape. Minetta sat on the couch, looking utterly betrayed. I said you could use 2, not 12. These things don't grow back instantly, you know? Kaminari grinned proudly. Science demands sacrifice. The tower wobbled, then collapsed. Splush. Half the lounge was sprayed with soda. Everyone burst into chaos. Todoroki silently handed Jiro a towel. Kirishima howled with laughter, and Aoyama twirled dramatically out of range like a glittery ballet dancer avoiding a splash zone. Midoriya couldn't help it. She laughed. Not the nervous kind. A real, relieved from the chest laugh. Suchan waved from the couch and patted the cushion beside her. Midoriya-chan, come sit with me before you get dragged into the next disaster. Midoriya made her way over, dodging a sticky puddle of cola as she sat down beside Azui. The frog girl gave her a soft smile. It's good to see you laugh again, Ribbit. Thanks, Midoriya said quietly. It's good to be here. Everyone really was here. Kirishima, Bakugo brooding by the window, but not leaving. Uraraka chatting with Jiro, Momo and Ida politely trying to organize a cleanup, even Aoyama offering someone a sparkling napkin. For a moment, despite the tension earlier in the day, it felt normal. Then Mina Ishido clapped her hands together with a wicked grin. Okay, new idea, she announced, leaping onto a coffee table like a pink whirlwind of energy. Now that we're all dorm buddies, I say we make this official with a competition. Competition? Kaminari asked, still dripping soda. Mina beamed. Best room contest. Duh. Everyone blinked. Uraraka tilted her head. Like, who decorated their room the best? Exactly, Mina said, hands on her hips. Cuteness, coolness, personal flair, points for sparkle and creativity. We rate each other's rooms, and the winner gets, she paused dramatically, a week of snack DLVRY from the losers. That's extortion, Jiro said flatly. I accept this challenge, Aoyama declared, already glowing. Does it have to be clean? Ciro muttered. Kirishima's grin widened. All right, I'm game. Even Bakugo raised a brow, mumbling something like, TCH, my room's fine. Whatever. Midoriya blinked. Wait, are we seriously doing this? She looked around. Everyone was suddenly animated, excited. Even Momo, despite her initial hesitation, seemed intrigued. And despite everything that had happened, it felt kind of nice. Normal. Silly. Like teenagers in a dorm. Not future heroes on the brink of war. Sue leaned closer to her. You're entering, right? Midoriya flushed. I mean, if everyone is, Ishido pointed a dramatic finger. Then it's settled. The best room showdown starts tomorrow. Prepare your layers, my fellow heroes. Groans and laughter echoed through the lounge. Midoriya looked around at all of them. Her friends, her classmates, her weird, wonderful team, and for the first time in a long while, the tightness in her chest eased just a little. Maybe, just maybe, this dorm life wouldn't be so bad. The lounge was buzzing with energy as Class 1-8 gathered, excitement hanging thick in the air. Everyone was there, some chatting, others already glancing at their phones, while a few exchanged quiet whispers. The energy from earlier had returned, and the competition to determine whose room was the best was about to begin. Midoriya stood by the couch, nervously fidgeting with her sleeve as she glanced around. It felt like everyone had been looking forward to this all day, some more seriously than others. It was clear there was no avoiding it now. A loud thud echoed from the kitchen, followed by Bakugo's irritated voice. Can you all shut up already? We don't have all night. Uraraka raised an eyebrow at Midoriya and gave a small smile. Well, at least it's not going to be boring, huh? Midoriya chuckled softly. Yeah, no kidding. The group slowly settled down, some of them standing in a loose circle as Ishido took charge. She grabbed a nearby piece of paper and waved it around dramatically. All right. Let's make this fair, Mina announced. We'll start with the boys' rooms, but the ladies will judge first. Got it. The group murmured in agreement as Ishido, with a flourish, checked her official clipboard, which was scribbled with all sorts of notes. Let's go, she said with a wide grin, already bouncing toward the hallway. Midoriya followed behind, slightly unsure but curious to see what kind of chaos awaited them in the boys' rooms. They reached the first stop, Bakugo's room. Ishido knocked twice and kicked the door open without waiting for a response. Bakugo was already leaning against his desk, his arms crossed, eyes narrowed as though daring them to step inside. Oi, quit standing there and get in already. Uraraka gave a grin. Well, you were the one who said to hurry up, Bakugo. They entered, Midoriya trailing just behind. Bakugo's room was, much to her surprise, surprisingly neat. The bed was perfectly made, the floor clear of any clutter, and the desk, though covered with a few hero-related materials, was organized. The walls were adorned with All Might posters, some of them framed, while others were hastily taped up. There were also several action figures and various hero gadgets on the shelves, including a small trophy from a recent class competition. This is actually pretty clean, Uraraka said, taking a quick look around. I was expecting explosives or something, but it's pretty orderly in here. Bakugo snorted. It's a hero's room, not some mess hall. What did you expect? More explosive design, Ashido teased, hopping onto his bed and throwing herself onto the neatly folded covers, ignoring the fact that she was probably crumpling them. Where's all the personality? I mean, it's just like tough and serious everywhere. Don't mess it up, Bakugo grumbled. I'm not some decorator, all right. Midoriya hesitated but spoke up. It feels like you, Kakin. It's kind of like your quirk in a way. Bakugo raised an eyebrow but didn't retort. Instead, he folded his arms tighter and looked away, muttering something under his breath. TCH whatever. Jiraiya scribbled something on her clipboard. All right, it's got that strong and silent vibe. Definitely not winning most fun, though. But there's definitely something here. Next up was Kirishima's room, and the mood shifted quickly as they arrived at his door. It was already wide open, and Kirishima was waiting by the entrance with a big, welcoming smile. Yo, everyone, ready to see my epic room? Midoriya blinked as she stepped inside. Kirishima's room was a burst of energy. His walls were covered in posters of pro heroes, particularly those with flashy, action-packed battle scenes. There are inspirational quotes scattered around too, all in bold, punchy fonts, along with a large rock collection on his windowsill. His desk was cluttered, but in a way that seemed oddly charming. Half of it looked like it belonged in a science lab, with strange rocks and tools, and the other half was filled with energy drink cans and snacks. This is so you, Kirishima, Momo said with a laugh. It's loud, bold, and full of life. Kirishima grinned, puffing his chest out. You bet. It's gotta be me, right? If my room doesn't make you feel pumped up, I'm doing it wrong. Midoriya smiled. It's definitely got a lot of personality. It feels strong. Kirishima's grin widened at that, clearly pleased by the compliment. Exactly. I want to feel motivated every time I come in here. Ashido made a note. I think it's going to get top marks for most energetic room. There's a lot going on, but it's all Kirishima. After visiting Bakugo and Kirishima's rooms, they made their way to the almost final stop in the boys' section, the room of the quietest member of their class, Todoroki. When they knocked, the door was already ajar. Todoroki stood near the window, his back turned, staring out into the hallway, as if he were contemplating something. The room felt much quieter, calmer, almost stark in its simplicity. The walls were bare except for a couple of family photos. His desk was neat, and his bed, although not as perfectly made as Bakugo's, was still orderly. This feels peaceful, Hagakure said softly as she stepped inside. It's serene. Todoroki glanced over his shoulder. I don't like clutter. That's clear, Ashido teased, sitting down on the bed and bouncing a little. Midoriya nodded. It's quiet. It feels like you. Calm, reserved. Todoroki gave a single nod, but didn't say anything further. He didn't seem bothered by the inspection, which was the most important part, but his room definitely gave off a much different vibe than the others. Azui scribbled down something on her clipboard. Not sure how it'll compete with all the energy rooms, but it's got a certain elegance. As they finished visiting Todoroki's room, the group headed back down the hallway toward the next stop, Sato's room. Unlike the others, there was something a little less loud about Sato's presence. He was always calm, friendly, and hardworking. His room was bound to be just as wholesome. When they knocked, Sato immediately opened the door with a big smile. Hey, everyone. Welcome to my humble abode. He greeted them warmly, standing aside to let them in. Midoriya stepped inside, immediately greeted by the comforting scent of freshly baked goods. Her eyes widened as she looked around. The room was cozy, with a neat, almost homey vibe. The walls were lined with shelves of books, some textbooks, but also novels, a few cookbooks, and even a couple of manga volumes. His bed, made neatly with a soft blue comforter, had a few baking magazines scattered around. A small corner of the room was dedicated to his baking supplies, neatly organized with bowls, measuring cups, and bags of flour and sugar. It smells amazing in here, Uraraka exclaimed, glancing around. Are you baking something, Sato? Sato grinned and reached over to a small table near the corner, lifting a delicate cake stand with a chiffon cake on it. The cake was light and airy, topped with a dusting of powdered sugar and fresh strawberries. I made chiffon cake, Sato said proudly. I thought it'd be nice to share with everyone. It's a little something to make the room visits even sweeter. The class collectively gasped in delight as he cut slices and handed them out. Wow, this is incredible, Kirishima said, already digging into his piece. It's so light. This is way better than any room I've seen so far. See, I told you Sato's room would be full of comfort, Uraraka said, munching happily on her own slice. This cake alone might just win most delicious room. Midoriya couldn't help but smile as she took a bite. The cake was perfect, light, fluffy, and just sweet enough. It was the kind of comfort food that made her feel at ease, surrounded by her friends. Sato's room felt like a warm embrace. You're really talented, Sato, Midoriya said, her voice full of appreciation. Sato blushed a little but gave a modest shrug. I just enjoy it. Cooking and baking make me feel good, and I wanted to share that with all of you. You've all been so supportive, so I thought I'd bake something to show my thanks. Well, you definitely succeeded, Ashido said, taking another bite of the cake. If there was an award for best room based on hospitality, you'd totally win. Sato smiled softly, looking around the room with a sense of pride. Thanks, everyone. I guess I just wanted my room to feel like a place where people could relax. It's nothing flashy, but it's home. Uraraka gave him an exaggerated nod. I think you nailed it. You've got the most comforting room, hands down. As Sato handed Midoriya a slice of the strawberry chiffon cake, she smiled brightly. Thanks, Sato. This looks amazing, she said, her voice warm and full of appreciation. The cake was appealing, fresh strawberries on top, a dusting of powdered sugar. It smelled heavenly. As she took a bite, she was immediately struck by the light, airy texture and the sweetness of the fruit. It was delicious, and she found herself savoring every bite. The others were enjoying their cake too, laughing and chatting around her. But then, out of nowhere, she felt a subtle nudge at her side. Midoriya looked up to see Bakugo standing there, arms crossed, his usual scowl in place. Tisich, he muttered, clearly not one for flowery words. You know, I think your cake's flavor is better than mine. Midoriya blinked in surprise. Huh, you like my cake more than yours. Bakugo shrugged, avoiding her gaze, though there was a faint glint in his eyes. Yeah, whatever. I'll trade you. Midoriya blinked again, more confused this time. Trade. Without waiting for an answer, Bakugo snatched her plate and swapped it with his own. I like the strawberry better. You can have this boring CRP vanilla. Midoriya paused, surprised. Wait, but you... she started to say, but then it clicked. Bakugo somehow knew that vanilla was her favorite. She laughed softly, feeling a little sheepish. Are you sure, Kakin? Bakugo didn't respond, only grunted as he took a bite of the strawberry cake. Midoriya couldn't help but smile. Well, if you insist, she said, taking a bite of the vanilla chiffon cake that had been swapped with hers. It was light and sweet, just the way she liked it. Thanks, Kakin, she said, her voice full of gratitude. He only gave a nonchalant shrug, his attention already back on his cake. Whatever. Just don't expect me to keep swapping with you. Midoriya smiled to herself, feeling a sense of comfort in the small, familiar exchange. She was surprised by how something so simple made her feel even more connected to her classmates. Even though it was just a piece of cake, it felt like a gesture that said a lot more. After their quick stop at Sato's room, everyone made their way to the girls' hallway, ready to check out the rest of the rooms. Midoriya was still feeling the warmth of the cake, but a nervous excitement fluttered in her chest. She wasn't sure what to expect from the girls' rooms, but she was eager to see where everyone lived. The first stop was Uraraka's room. It was filled with cozy, soft colors. Her bed was piled with plush stuffed animals, and there were papers taped to the walls, with her doodles and some quotes from heroes she admired. Uraraka beamed as they all stepped in, showing off the space with pride. This is my little sanctuary, she said, grinning. It's not much, but I love it here. It's so cute. Momo exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. You really know how to make a space feel welcoming. I love all the stuffed animals, Kirishima added with a grin, reaching out to poke one of the giant plushies. Real soft vibes. But before Midoriya could say anything, Mineta suddenly darted toward the closet in the corner. Huh, this is what I've been waiting for, he said, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Mineta, don't you dare, Uraraka shouted, but it was too late. He was already trying to stick his nose into her clothes, acting like some kind of creep. Mineta, are you seriously doing this right now? Ida's voice cut through the room, filled with disbelief. His face was a deep shade of red, but his stance was firm. He marched over to Mineta and grabbed him by the collar, pulling him away from the closet. I just wanted to see what kind of clothes she wears, you know. Mineta stammered, his usual pervy grin now replaced with nervousness. Enough, Mineta. Ida scolded, shaking him like a rag doll. We are not here for that kind of behavior. Why, yeah, Uraraka added, hands on her hips. We're all friends here. Keep it respectful. The rest of the class nodded in agreement, and Mineta awkwardly rubbed the back of his head, muttering, Fine, I get it. No more snooping around. Thank you, Ida, Midoriya said, giving him a grateful smile. Ida's face softened in return, though he still looked flustered. Of course, Midoriya. It's my duty to protect the class from Mineta's nonsense, Ida replied, straightening his back in that signature, earnest way he always did. Let's just move on, Kirishima said with a wide grin, clearly trying to lighten the mood. The next room they checked out was Momo's, and it was as elegant and neat as she was. The space was a blend of practicality and beauty, with her study materials neatly organized and the shelves filled with carefully curated items that reflected her high standards. Everyone complimented her on how well she kept everything in order, and even Mineta, sensing the absence of something to perv on, settled down and behaved for the moment. Thanks, everyone, Momo said, laughing lightly. I do my best to keep everything in order. It helps me stay focused. Once they finished admiring Momo's space, the group moved on to the last stop of the day, Midoriya's room. All right, Midoriya, your turn, Ashido said, practically bouncing as they all crowded in front of her door. Midoriya hesitated a moment before opening it. She wasn't quite sure what her room would say about her, but she was excited to show it to everyone. She pushed the door open, revealing a space filled with posters of heroes, including a few of All Might, some scattered notebooks filled with notes and sketches, and a carefully organized bookshelf filled with all her study materials. A little desk in the corner was stacked with her latest hero analysis work. There was a comfortable, almost minimalist feel to the room, but it had personal touches, like a small shelf with a few souvenirs from her past adventures and training. This is nice, Midoriya, Uraraka said as she stepped inside, her eyes bright with curiosity. It's simple, Midoriya muttered, rubbing the back of her neck. I don't have as much stuff as some of you, but it works. This is so you, Momo said, giving her a warm smile. You've put a lot of thought into it. Then, without warning, Mineta slipped up beside Midoriya, leaning in a little too close. So, he started with a sly grin. Since you became a girl, where'd you buy your underwear? I bet you got some cute stuff, huh? The air seemed to freeze in that moment. Midoriya's face went bright red, and she stammered, what? Before she could even gather herself, a few voices came to her defense. Tisich, Bakugo growled from behind her, his voice low but unmistakable in its threat. If you say one more thing like that, I'm going to make sure you can't walk for a week, Mineta. Mineta froze, his usual bravado draining from his face as Bakugo's fiery gaze bore into him. Todoroki's voice was calm, but there was a subtle edge to it. I think we've all had enough of that, Mineta. Ida stepped forward, hands clenched into fists, his expression full of righteous fury. This is a place of mutual respect. How dare you speak like that to Midoriya? Even Kirishima's usual laid-back attitude had disappeared, replaced by a protective glare. That's not cool, man. Back off. Mineta, now visibly intimidated by the combined force of their glares, held his hands up in surrender. Wait. I was just joking, you're not funny, Bakugo snapped, crossing his arms. Keep that CRP to yourself. Midoriya, though embarrassed, felt a warmth in her chest. She glanced at her friends. No, her classmates, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They were all here for her, and they wouldn't let anyone cross the line. "Thanks, guys," Midoriya said quietly, her voice full of appreciation. "Don't worry about it," Kirishima said with his usual easy grin, clapping her on the back. "We've got your back, always." With that, the group moved on, the tension fading. Midoriya couldn't help but smile, feeling like her place was becoming more solid with every moment they spent together. After everyone had finished touring each other's rooms, they made their way back to the common room, gathering together in a loose circle. The energy was lighter now, laughing, teasing, and generally having fun as they all took their places on the couches and chairs. "All right, time for the official vote," Uraraka said, clapping her hands to get everyone's attention. "We'll each vote for who we think has the best and worst room. You can't vote for your own room, though. Fair game." Midoriya, still feeling a little embarrassed about the whole room tour thing, shrugged but smiled. She'd really enjoyed seeing everyone's faces, and she was curious about who would win. "I'm voting for Sato," Momo said, grinning. "He had the most edible room." She winked at him, causing him a chuckle. "I second that," Kirishima said, pointing a thumb towards Sato. "Chiffon cake wins everything, man." Sato's face turned a little pink from all the attention. "Ah, thanks, everyone, but you're making me embarrassed now. I vote for Uraraka." Mineta piped up, his grin mischievous. Her room was, full of good vibes. He was clearly trying to keep the peace after his earlier misstep with Midoriya. "I'm voting for Momo," Todoroki said in his usual monotone, though his voice carried the slight warmth that made his vote sound more like an endorsement. The votes went around the room quickly, with everyone pitching in their opinions. But when it came to the final vote, it wasn't a huge surprise when Sato came out on top. "Looks like Sato wins the best room." Uraraka cheered, throwing her hands in the air. "Congratulations. You get to pick the snacks for the week." Sato's face lit up with a bright smile. "Wow, thanks, everyone. I'll make sure the snacks are the best." But then, a voice piped up from the back of the room. "Yeah, good job, Sato," Denki said with a dramatic roll of his eyes. "But wait, Sato, don't you think there was some bribery going on with that cake?" He was clearly joking, but the playful accusation made everyone laugh. "I mean, Sato's room was good," Bakugo cut in with a grunt, "but it's hard to argue with cake as a reward." Sato scratched the back of his head, laughing nervously. "It wasn't bribery, I swear. I just wanted to share with everyone." Mineta groaned, clearly sulking. All right, you guys all voted for Sato, so fine. But can we just talk about who has the worst room?" Everyone looked toward Mineta as his eyes glinted mischievously. "Well, considering someone had their creepy, pervy moment, I think we all know who the loser is," Bakugo said, crossing his arms and glaring at Mineta. Mineta's eyes widened in mock innocence. What?" he stammered. "I didn't do anything that bad." "Yeah, you did," Kirishima chimed in, his grin wide as he crossed his arms. "And you definitely went snooping around Uraraka's closet. I think we all agree that someone's room wasn't just the worst. It was also a little inappropriate," Todoroki added, his icy voice not giving an inch. Midoriya couldn't help but laugh at how quickly Mineta was getting called out by everyone. She felt a little bad for him, but it was hard to deny that he really didn't do himself any favors today. All right, Uraraka said. "We've got our winner and our loser. So, Mineta, for being the worst room this time, you're on dishwashing duty for the week." Mineta's eyes widened in horror. Wait, what? No." He grabbed the back of his neck, looking utterly defeated. "You guys can't be serious. You really shouldn't have been a perv, Mineta," Ida said, his voice sharp. "You brought this on yourself." "Can't argue with that," Ida added, adjusting his glasses. "You've got to face the consequences of your actions." Mineta slumped down on the couch dramatically. "This is so unfair." "Well, life isn't always fair, Mineta," Kirishima said, clapping him on the back with a friendly grin. "But you'll live. And hey, you'll get really good at dishwashing." "Exactly," Sato added with a wink. "Look on the bright side. You're going to be a dishwashing expert by the end of the week." "Ugh, fine, Mineta grumbled, throwing his hands up in mock surrender. "I get it, okay. I'll wash the dishes for a week, but you guys owe me. Big time." The room erupted in laughter as Mineta sulked, but there was no doubt that the playful atmosphere was back. It was the usual chaotic, yet light-hearted energy that made Class 1A so special. And now, Sato, Uraraka said with a grin, for your victory, you get to choose the snacks for the week. No complaints about that, right? No complaints at all, Sato said happily, still a little overwhelmed by all the attention. I'll make sure they're the best snacks ever. As the group chatted and laughed, planning out the snacks for the week, Midoriya leaned back on the couch, feeling grateful for this time with her friends. Despite all the chaos and the mishaps, they really were a family in their own way. She couldn't help but feel a smile tug at her lips. Midoriya hadn't even realized how late it was until Ida suddenly stood up, his posture rigid and authoritative as always. It is now exactly 8:47 p.m., he declared, slicing the air with a sharp karate chop motion. While our room showcase has been productive in strengthening camaraderie, we've yet to address our true obligation for tonight. A collective groan rippled through the group. Ah, come on, Ida, Kaminari whined from the couch, flopping dramatically onto Zero. I just sat down. Ida adjusted his glasses with a gleam that signaled he was not to be stopped. Now that we are living in shared accommodations, we must implement a system for maintaining the common areas in proper order. That includes the kitchen, lounge, hallways, and bathrooms. Midoriya blinked and sat up straighter. Right? They couldn't exactly have 20 teenagers living together and expect things to stay clean on their own. Do we really need to do this now? Mineta muttered, half buried in a beanbag chair. Yes, Ida answered firmly. Organization begins on day one. I think it's a good idea, Yaoyorozu said, stepping forward with her tablet in hand. And I have a solution that's both efficient and fair. We'll assign responsibilities using a randomized wheel. She tapped her screen, revealing a colorful digital spinner. Wait, you made a wheel. Kaminari leaned over to see. That's amazing. I downloaded it, Yaoyorozu said modestly. But I input all our names and set the algorithm for equal rotation. That's still super extra, and I love it, Ashido grinned. Spin that sucker. Let the destiny of dish duty be decided, Zero intoned dramatically. Yaoyorozu tapped the screen. The wheel jingled cheerfully as names flashed by, and finally landed with a festive ding. Monday's team, Todoroki, Jairu, Kaminari, and Midoriya. Midoriya perked up. Oh, that's not bad. Jairu sighed, but gave a thumbs up. Guess I'll bring my playlist. Todoroki just nodded. I don't mind cleaning. I do, Kaminari said. But at least it's not bathroom duty alone. One by one, the rest of the week filled out. Tuesday, Kirishima, Hagakure, Mineta, and Uraraka. Wednesday, Aoyama, Shoji, Ashido, and Yaoyorozu. Thursday, Ojiro, Satu, Tokoimi, and Zero. Friday, Bakugo, Ida, Koda, and Hagakure. Her name spun again since she'd volunteered for a double shift. When Bakugo's name came up, everyone went dead quiet. I'll clean, he muttered, but I'm not picking up anyone's DMN socks. No one asked you to, Zero said, barely suppressing a laugh. Still gonna scream at the vacuum, though, Kaminari whispered to Midoriya. She chuckled under her breath. It was nice, feeling like she belonged here, even when things were chaotic, especially when they were chaotic. And remember, Ida continued, pulling out his notebook like he was running a board meeting. This rotation only applies to shared spaces. Your personal rooms remain your responsibility. Meaning Mineta still has the worst one, Ashido called out, grinning. And Sato still wins snacks for a week, Uraraka added, giving Sato a thumbs up. Dinky groaned. That was bribery, though. It was cake, Sato shrugged. Good cake. And with that, the final order of business wrapped up. Students began stretching, yawning, peeling off to return to their rooms. Midoriya sat back for a moment, letting the voices swirl around her. The laughter, the teasing, the gentle hum of friendship. This was dorm life. And even with the messes, the chores, and the weird competitions, she couldn't help but think it was starting to feel like home. It had been a week since they moved into the dorms, and only a day since training resumed for their provisional licenses. Midoriya's muscles still ached. Her notebook was cluttered with sketches and crossed-out ideas, and her thoughts just wouldn't stop spinning. Even as her body begged for rest, her mind was wide awake, tangled in a loop of self-doubt. Was she still trying to imitate All Might? That question haunted her more than she wanted to admit. Even after everything, even after developing shoot style and vowing to stand on her own 2 feet, those words All Might had spoken during their training still echoed loud in her skull. You have to find what only you can do. Midoriya rolled onto her back, staring at the dark ceiling of her dorm room. The glow of her All Might nightlight felt a little dimmer tonight. Finally, she sighed, grabbed her hoodie and notebook, and tiptoed out of bed. She wasn't expecting anyone else to be tea. Had been a week since they moved into the dorms, and only a day since training resumed for their provisional licenses. Midoriya's muscles still ached. Her notebook was cluttered with sketches and crossed-out ideas, and her thoughts just wouldn't stop spinning. Even as her body begged for rest, her mind was wide awake, tangled in a loop of self-doubt. Was she still trying to imitate All Might? That question haunted her more than she wanted to admit. Even after everything, even after developing shoot style and vowing to stand on her own 2 feet, those words All Might had spoken during their training still echoed loud in her skull. You have to find what only you can do. Midoriya rolled onto her back, staring at the dark ceiling of her dorm room. The glow of her All Might nightlight felt a little dimmer tonight. Finally, she sighed, grabbed her hoodie and notebook, and tiptoed out of bed. She wasn't expecting anyone else to be awake at this hour, definitely not him. The rooftop balcony was quiet, bathed in silver moonlight. The breeze was crisp, brushing against her legs where her pajama shorts left skin bare. She hugged her notebook tighter, letting the wind clear her head, and then she saw him. Todoroki, sitting on the far bench, his back half lit by the soft flicker of a flame dancing in his palm. He was dressed down in a loose hoodie and sweatpants, legs crossed casually, expression unreadable. Midoriya froze mid-step. "Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt." He turned, eyes reflecting the low flame. "You're not. Couldn't sleep." She shook her head. "Too many thoughts." He gave a small nod and looked back to the flickering flame in his hand. "Yeah, me too." She hesitated, then stepped closer and slowly sat beside him, not quite touching. From here, she could feel the warmth radiating from his hand. It was calming. "What are you doing with your fire?" she asked. "Try to control the output without letting it flare too hot." His gaze stayed fixed on the flame. "It's stupid, but I thought maybe if I could MSTR this, I'd feel a little more in control of myself." Midoriya smiled faintly. "That's not stupid." The silence stretched between them again, comfortable almost, but her heart was beating a little too fast for her to relax. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the moonlight, or the way his voice sounded softer at night. Or maybe it was the way he looked at her then. Really looked. "I like this version of you," Todoroki said suddenly. Midoriya blinked. "Huh. I mean," he glanced away, just slightly, but she caught the faint pink rising in his ears. "I liked you before too. But now, even with everything changing, you still adapt and be better. That's kind of amazing." Her breath caught. There were 100 responses tumbling around in her head, but none of them made it past her lips. She just stared at him, eyes wide, notebook clutched tight against her chest. Then, wordlessly, Todoroki extended his hand toward her. The small flame still hovered in his palm, casting a soft orange glow. "Warmth helps sometimes," he said, voice quiet. "If you want." Midoriya hesitated, then slowly placed her fingers over his. The warmth spread through her hand, up her arm, into the tight spaces in her chest she hadn't even realized were cold. And somehow, that quiet little gesture said more than either of them could put into words. They stayed like that for a while, 2 tired students under the stars, fire between their hands, hearts racing just a little faster. Midoriya didn't know what would happen tomorrow. But tonight, this was enough to comfort her for a moment. The silence stretched again, longer this time. The wind had picked up a little, brushing through Midoriya's hair and tugging at the pages of her notebook. But she didn't move. She didn't want to break the moment. Todoroki's flame had dimmed to just a flicker in his palm, casting faint shadows across his face. His expression was still unreadable, calm, composed, but his eyes kept flicking to her. Then quietly he shifted closer. His hand gently pulled the notebook from her grasp, setting it aside on the bench. Before she could ask what he was doing, he lifted his arm behind her and guided her head to his shoulder. Midoriya stiffened. Her breath caught somewhere in her throat as her cheek pressed against the soft fabric of his hoodie. She could feel the slow, steady rise and fall of his breathing. The warmth of him. The way his heart wasn't racing, but hers absolutely was. He didn't say anything. He just let her rest there. Maybe he sensed it. How heavy her thoughts were. Maybe he could tell she was tired, not just in her body, but in her heart too. Midoriya closed her eyes for a second. This is normal, she told herself. Friends do this. Close friends. We're friends. And yet, even as she repeated that in her head, she couldn't quite believe it. Because she'd never felt this before, this quiet closeness, this heat blooming low in her chest. It was gentle, unexpected, NTMT in a way that made her feel strangely vulnerable. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she let herself lean into the warmth, allowed her eyes to fall half-lidded as the breeze tugged at her bangs. Todoroki didn't move. He just sat with her like that, grounded and silent, like he was telling her she didn't have to carry everything alone. Not tonight. Not with him here. And for the first time in a while, she felt okay. The smell of miso soup that morning. Plates clinked, conversations overlapped, and the mood was refreshingly normal. Class 1A was gathered at the long dining tables, some still half asleep, others energized by the promise of another day of training. Midoriya sat across from Uraraka, who was cheerfully wolfing down her Tamagoyaki, while Ida methodically organized the pickled vegetables on his plate like they were on a color-coded grid. Midoriya herself was stirring her rice absent-mindedly, mind still a little hazy, not from lack of sleep, but from remembering the rooftop. She hadn't expected Todoroki to speak to her again about it, at least not so soon. But there he was, sliding into the seat beside her with his usual calm, hair still a little damp from the shower. "Good morning," he said. Then, just loud enough for her to hear, "How are you feeling? Was last night too hot?" Midoriya blinked, chopsticks pausing midair. "Huh." Bakugo's head whipped around from 2 tables down. "What the hell do you mean too hot?" Midoriya flushed a deep red. "And no, it's not like that. He was regulating his fire last night, and I let him, touch his fire." Kirishima, halfway through a bite of grilled salmon, choked. "Hold up. You let him what?" "It wasn't like that," she cried, waving her hands frantically as her whole face burned. Even Ida froze mid-chew. "Midoriya-kun, I recommend rephrasing." Todoroki, completely unbothered, simply added, "I was helping her relax. It's not uncommon to share warmth when someone's distressed." "Yeah, well, maybe don't talk about your freaking fire-touching therapy in the middle of breakfast." Bakugo snapped, slamming his chopsticks down. "Oh, come on." Uraraka laughed, though she covered her mouth with her sleeve. "It's not like they were making out on the roof or anything." That didn't help. Bakugo glared at Todoroki like he was about to throw his rice bowl. "You shouldn't be getting that close to her. That ain't your place." Todoroki calmly turned his head. "And interrupting private conversations isn't yours." Midoriya stared down at her miso soup, wishing she could crawl into it. Why did everything sound way worse than it was? Kirishima, meanwhile, had completely given up holding it together. "Dude, let him touch his fire. I can't. Can we please just focus on breakfast?" Midoriya squeaked, burying her face in her hands. Uraraka leaned over and whispered, "Next time maybe don't say things that sound like that." Todoroki, completely unfazed, took a sip of tea. "I thought I phrased it clearly." Ida nodded stiffly. "You phrased it scientifically. That may be the issue." Midoriya sighed deeply into her bowl. One peaceful rooftop talk, and now her entire class thought she and Todoroki were fire flirting. And the worst part, she still wasn't sure why Bakugo looked like he was ready to explode. After the absolute chaos of breakfast, the fire comments, Bakugo's near explosion, and Kirishima still laughing about fire touching. Midoriya thought the day couldn't possibly get more embarrassing. But then Ida clapped a firm hand on her shoulder. Midoriya-kun, Uraraka-kun, and I should make a trip to the support course today. We need to prepare for the upcoming provisional license training. There's no better time to optimize your hero costume. Uraraka beamed. Yeah, you've been saying your arms are still taking a beating, right? Maybe Hatsum can help come up with something new. Midoriya blinked. Oh, right. Hatsum-san. Her stomach twisted with nerves. The last time she went to see May Hatsum, she walked out of the Labagirl. Literally. Thanks to a quirk-enhancing gadget and a very unfortunate accident with Rento. And here she was still like this. Uraraka must have sensed her hesitation because she leaned in, voice soft. Hey, you okay? You don't have to go if you're uncomfortable. Midoriya shook her head quickly. No, it's fine. I want to go. I need to go. If I don't make some kind of upgrade, my arms are going to fall off next time we train. She tried to sound confident, but her voice cracked a little on fall off. Ida nodded with approval. An excellent mindset, Midoriya-kun. Being proactive is part of a hero's responsibility. So after a quick stop to grab her notes, the three of them headed down toward the development lab, passing the smell of scorched circuits and machine oil before they even opened the door. And then, boom, something exploded the moment they stepped inside. Smoke puffed from the vents. A spring launched past Uraraka's head, and May Hatsum popped out from behind a massive pile of mechanical limbs, goggles askew, grinning like she'd never seen a better opportunity to test her babies. Oh, Midoriya, long time no see. Or should I say, Midoriya-chan. Midoriya's soul briefly left her body. Uraraka covered her mouth to stifle a laugh. Ida cleared his throat awkwardly. Still working out the transformation tech bugs, Hatsum used, lifting a charred prototype. But hey, you look great. I think the results speak for themselves. Midoriya smiled tightly. Thanks. I was hoping we could focus on my costume this time. Hatsum's grin only widened. Oh, looking for new support gear. Reinforcement bracers. Maybe a shock absorption joint module. Oh, I've got ideas. As Hatsum dragged her toward the drafting table, excitedly rambling about impact regulation and stylized thermal shielding, Midoriya glanced back at her friends with a nervous smile. Yeah, it was weird being back here, but she had to keep moving forward. No matter how many mortifying tech-induced accidents or awkward breakfast conversations stood in her way. It had only been a few minutes since they stepped into Hatsum's lab, but chaos had already swallowed the room whole. I just want to reinforce my support gear so my arms won't break again, Midoriya explained, a little nervously, clutching her notebook like a shield. Hatsum didn't seem to hear her. You know what your problem is, she said cheerfully, goggles sliding down her nose as she fished out a strange contraption from a pile of smoke-belching scraps. Midoriya blinked. You're thinking too small. You want to protect your arms, sure, but you're fighting like a one-track robot. You need to evolve. Hatsum flipped a SWCH, and the device in her hands sparked ominously. I really just need some bracers, Midoriya tried again. Test subject time. What? Before she could dodge, Hatsum pressed a metal plate to Midoriya's upper back and hit another SWCH. A sudden jolt of compressed air blasted Midoriya forward, arms flailing, notebook flying, as she skidded across the slick floor on reflex. She didn't fall. Instead, her legs shot out to catch herself in 3 tight, controlled bursts of movement. The third step was a pivot and crouch, muscles tense, balanced on instinct. Everything went still. Midoriya blinked. Her arms were fine. She caught herself entirely with her legs. I didn't even, she muttered. Hatsum's voice rang out proudly. See, muscle memory doesn't lie. Uraraka hurried over. Midoriya-chan, are you okay? She stood up slowly, eyes wide. I didn't use my arms. I caught myself with my legs. I've never done that before. Ida looked impressed. That was a precise recovery. Almost automatic. Midoriya's mind was racing now. She always thought she had to use her arms because All Might did. because that's where one for all activated first. But her legs were strong, stable, less damaged. All that training, running, leaping, dodging, she'd been preparing for this without even knowing it. "I've been limiting myself," she whispered, "because I thought I had to follow his path exactly. But I don't." Hatsum tossed her a half-finished prototype boot. "Well, get ready to start kicking, hero girl. You've got so much potential down there." Midoriya blushed, holding the boot like it was sacred. Uraraka grinned. "New moves incoming." "Maybe," Midoriya smiled faintly, eyes lit with new purpose. "Yeah, a whole new way to fight." And this time, it wouldn't break her down. As they left the lab, with Uraraka still trying to wipe soot off her uniform and Hatsum already scribbling blueprints in the background, Midoriya lingered behind, the prototype boot hugged close to her chest. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. Legs, mobility, speed, stability. Everything she'd been overlooking in herself because she was trying too hard to mirror someone else. She looked over at Ida, who was walking ahead, arms moving in that purposeful, clipped motion that always made him look like he belonged in a marching band. A fast marching band. She hurried to catch up. "Ida-kun," she said, suddenly nervous. Do you think you could teach me some techniques? For movement, kicking, lower body combat." Ida stopped and blinked at her, his glasses catching the light. "You want me to train you?" She nodded, clutching the boot. "You've always been amazing at using your legs. I've been so focused on power through my arms that I forgot how much control and power there is in speed, in momentum. And your recipro techniques, your form, it's efficient. I want to learn how to fight without breaking myself." For a moment, Ida just stared. Then his eyes shimmered, and he placed a hand over his chest like she'd just honored his family legacy. "I would be honored, Midoriya," he said proudly. "It is the duty of a hero to pass down their skills for the betterment of the next generation, even if we're in the same generation." Uraraka giggled. "You're making it sound like you're retiring." Ida ignored that. "We will begin training tomorrow morning. Prepare your calves." Midoriya laughed softly. "Thank you, Ida-kun. Really?" As they walked back toward the dorms under the slowly setting sun, Midoriya felt lighter. Like for the first time in a long while, she was no longer chasing someone else's path. She was carving out her own. Bakugo didn't give a damn about room contests. At least, that's what he told himself. He watched from the edge of the common room, arms crossed, scowl in place, as everyone laughed and bickered over who had the best interior design. Sato got the crown thanks to that diamond chiffon cake, bribery, as Kaminari said, and Mineta was whining about dish duty like it was a war crime. Idiots. All of them. But even he had to admit, it wasn't a bad way to end the night. He kept stealing glances. Not that he meant to, but she was right there. Midoriya, still grinning a little, still awkward when people teased her, still clutching that notebook half the time like it was armor. She looked different lately. It wasn't just the obvious, though yeah, he noticed that too. You'd have to be blind not to. But it was more than that. The way she carried herself. Her eyes. Like something was shifting in her deep down. Something he couldn't quite place. And that bothered him. He shoved the thought aside and headed to the hallway, muttering something about getting water. Not because he was thinking too much. He just didn't want to sit there with a bunch of extras laughing like they'd already made it. But even as he walked away, he heard it. Her voice, laughing. Easy. Warm. It hit him in the chest like a gut punch. DM in it. He slammed his door shut harder than necessary. Bakugo hated dorms. Too many people, too much noise, too little space. He didn't care if it was for their safety or whatever. Being forced to sleep under the same roof as a bunch of loud, nosy idiots was not his idea of a secure environment, especially when his room got judged like some home design competition. Sato and his DMN cake. Kaminari accusing him of not even trying. Ashido commenting that his room lacked warmth. And Zero, stupid, stretchy Zero, putting up 8. 5 scorecard like this was the Olympics. He nearly exploded the hallway. At least Kirishima didn't say anything too dumb. He just gave Bakugo that usual grin and said, "It's very you, man." Whatever that meant. When training started again, Bakugo finally felt like he could breathe. Real work. Real progress. No distractions. Just him and the grind. He didn't need special moves or upgrade ideas. He was already ahead. Power, technique, instincts. That's all he needed. Still, even he could admit that watching everyone try to figure out their new tricks was kind of interesting. Kirishima had been messing around with hardening angles, sparring with Zero between sessions. Kaminari kept frying the target drones by accident and yelling, "It's a learning process," every time he short-circuited. Ashido was flipping around like she belonged in a breakdancing tournament, her acid coating her arms like gloves. Midoriya was quieter. Too quiet. That's how Bakugo ended up awake past midnight, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling with a tight knot in his gut. He hadn't seen her since dinner. Probably journaling again or obsessing over All Might's words like she always did. Still trying to copy him, Bakugo thought, irritated. He wasn't sure what made him move. Restlessness. Habit. Something else he didn't want to name. But he left his room and headed upstairs, barefoot, hands in his pockets, hoodie over his head. He didn't expect anyone to be up there. But he heard voices. Low ones. He paused, just around the corner from the rooftop balcony door. His hand curled into a fist. He didn't mean to overhear. But the scene, Todoroki and Midoriya, was impossible to ignore. His eyes narrowed as he watched from the shadow of the doorframe, heart pounding for reasons he couldn't place. The way Todoroki was sitting with her, the warmth of the flickering flame in his palm, the quiet space between them, it all struck him like a punch to the gut. Midoriya, her cheeks flushed from the cool night air, was sitting too close, her fingers brushing his. That light in her eyes, it was something Bakugo hadn't seen before, not directed at him, at least. Her usual nervous energy had softened, and she seemed content. Relaxed. Warmth helps sometimes. Todoroki's voice was low, calm, a slight rasp to it that Bakugo hated hearing in such a gentle tone. The next moment, Todoroki guided her head to his shoulder. Bakugo's BLD ran cold. He didn't even know why the hell it pissed him off. She'd always been friendly with Todoroki, and hell, they were teammates. This wasn't something that should bother him. But it did. It wasn't jealousy, right? No, it couldn't be. He had no reason to feel this way. But there was something about the way Todoroki had moved, how he was holding Midoriya so effortlessly close, and how Midoriya didn't even flinch when he did it, as if it was natural, as if it felt right. Bakugo clenched his fists at his sides, biting down on the fire that burned in his chest. He hated this. He hated them, that calmness between them. How did Todoroki make it seem so easy? How could he just be there? Think. Bakugo muttered under his breath, turning on his heel and storming back down the hallway before anyone heard him. He was not going to stick around for this. Not tonight. It wasn't bad enough that Bakugo had overheard that stupid conversation on the rooftop. No, it just had to get better. So much better. When he couldn't sleep, his brain stuck on that dim-in nerd and her cozy little moment with Icy Hot. He had tossed and turned all night, his head buzzing with thoughts of her with him. Just great. Great. The next morning, he dragged himself into the kitchen, the entire dorm still too quiet for his liking. His eyes were bloodshot, his patience already worn thin. Bakugo had been at the breakfast table long before Midoriya and the others trickled in, his usual seat across from Kirishima and Denki. He hadn't been in the mood to talk much, just staring into his bowl of rice, angry at the stupid, sleepless night he'd just had. He could still hear that DMN Nord's laugh in his head. And Icy Hot, that calming voice, her smile. He shoved a piece of bacon into his mouth, trying to drown out the thoughts. Kirishima, ever the morning sunshine, was busy chatting about something or other, while Denki kept cracking jokes about the training exercises yesterday. But Bakugo wasn't listening. He was too busy thinking about everything he didn't want to think about. The last thing he needed was more of them, Midoriya and Todoroki acting like they were that close. And then, like fate just had it out for him, Todoroki walked in. It was always the same with him. So timid and calm, so collected, even with wet hair, still dripping from a shower. He slid into the seat beside Midoriya without missing a beat. Good morning, Todoroki greeted her, his voice cool and steady. And then, just loud enough for her to hear, he added, how are you feeling? Was last night too hot? Bakugo's head whipped around so fast that he nearly knocked his drink over. What the hell do you mean too hot? Midoriya's face went bright red, and she started flailing with her hands. And no, it's not like that. He was regulating his fire last night, and I let him, touch his fire. Kirishima, who had been halfway through a bite of grilled salmon, nearly choked. Hold up, you let him what? It wasn't like that. Midoriya cried, her voice getting louder, if anything, her face burning. Even Ida, who had been quietly munching on his cereal, froze mid-chew. Midoriya-kun, I recommend rephrasing. Todoroki, looking completely unfazed by the chaos he'd just sparked, added calmly. I was helping her relax. It's not uncommon to share warmth when someone's distressed. Bakugo couldn't hold back any longer. Yeah, well maybe don't talk about your freaking fire-touching therapy in the middle of breakfast, he snapped, slamming his chopsticks down on the table with a loud crack. Oh, come on, Uraraka laughed, though she covered her mouth with her sleeve. It's not like they were making out on the roof or anything. That was the last straw. Bakugo's eye twitched, his face turning a deeper shade of red than Midoriya's had been. I'm not even going to listen to this SHD, he muttered, turning away and shoving his plate aside. He didn't even want to look at them. The stupid conversation, the stupid warmth, the stupid, unbothered looks on both of their faces. As far as Bakugo was concerned, the sooner he left, the better. He couldn't stand it. Couldn't stand the way his mind kept spiraling back to the way Todoroki had been so close to her, all calm and careful, while he was just him. Yeah, whatever, he grumbled, grabbing his bag and storming out of the cafeteria before anyone could comment further. There was no way he was sticking around for more of that. After Bakugo brushed his teeth with the usual fury, spitting out the minty paste and wiping his mouth with a frustrated growl, he went straight to the training grounds. He was in no mood for anything else, just the satisfaction of working himself until his frustrations melted away with every punch, every explosion. But as he reached the elevator, his plans were interrupted. Bakugo, hey, wait up. Kirishima's voice called out from behind him, his ever-energetic tone cutting through the tension in the air. Bakugo didn't even turn to look as he slammed his hand on the elevator button. What do you want, Red? He muttered, already annoyed that his space was being invaded. Kirishima jogged up to him, a wide grin plastered on his face. Come on, man. I'm heading to the training grounds, too. Why don't we go together? Bakugo shot him a glare, but there was a flicker of something else there. Kirishima wasn't the one who bothered him. Not really. It was the whole dim-end situation, the stupid mess with Todoroki and that nerd, and the fact that Kirishima seemed to be getting along with them just fine. So, against his better judgment, Bakugo didn't argue, just grunted and nodded. Fine. Whatever, Bakugo growled, stepping into the elevator, Kirishima following right behind him. As the doors slid shut, Bakugo leaned against the wall, arms crossed tightly across his chest. Kirishima glanced at him, still grinning. So, about breakfast this morning. Bakugo's eye twitched, and he shot Kirishima a sideways glare. I don't want to talk about it. I don't know why I'm still listening to that CRP. Kirishima's grin widened, clearly enjoying the discomfort he was causing. Oh, I think you're just a little mad because you heard about Todoroki and Midoriya. Huh. Shut the hell up, Bakugo snapped, turning away so he didn't have to look at the guy. But his chest tightened just thinking about it. The way Todoroki had just casually approached Midoriya, his diamond fire still flickering like it was nothing, like it wasn't something that made Bakugo's BLD boil. Kirishima leaned closer, voice playful. You're walking on thin ice, Bakugo. You know that, right? Thin ice. Bakugo's teeth clenched. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Kirishima tilted his head, his teasing tone still light, but his eyes gleamed with a bit of mischief. Oh, come on. You can't tell me you're not at least a little bothered by how close Todoroki and Deku have gotten. I mean, you've got to be jealous, right? No one can act that calm and casual about it. Bakugo growled, glaring at the floor. I'm not jealous. I don't give a SHD about their friendship. Kirishima's grin only grew wider, clearly not buying it. Sure. But hey, man, it's okay to be a little jealous. You're not fooling anyone. I said, shut the hell up. Bakugo snapped, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. Just because I'm not some idiot like you doesn't mean I give a CRP about their little fire-touching therapy session. It's none of my business. Kirishima let out a chuckle, his eyes full of amusement. Right, totally none of your business. But you're still thinking about it. I can see it in your eyes. And speaking of thinking about stuff, he grinned even wider, leaning in closer. You still haven't forgotten about the whole kiss thing, huh? Bakugo's body stiffened, and for a moment, the elevator felt like it was closing in on him. He could already feel the heat rising in his neck, but he fought it down. That was different, he muttered, though the words sounded weak even to him. Kirishima raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah, because I seem to remember someone getting pretty mad when it happened. Someone who definitely still remembers it, even though they keep denying it. Bakugo's fist slammed into the elevator wall with a sharp crack, making Kirishima flinch slightly, but still, he didn't back off. I haven't forgotten. I'm still pissed about it. And don't you dare think I'm letting it go just because you're acting all casual about it. Kirishima's grin didn't fade. Instead, he leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest, his tone turning more teasing. Hey, Bakugo, all I'm saying is, it's clear you care about her. I mean, you were all mad earlier. And don't try to say you don't. Just admit it. Bakugo was silent for a long moment, his breath coming a little faster than normal, trying to suppress everything he wanted to say. The elevator reached the training ground floor, and as the doors opened, Bakugo forced himself to step out without acknowledging Kirishima's words. Just shut up, Red, Bakugo muttered. Let's just get to work. Kirishima followed, his grin never faltering, clearly enjoying the reaction he had gotten from Bakugo. Yeah, Bakugo. I know you're mad, but you're gonna have to face it sooner or later, huh? Whether you like it or not. Bakugo said nothing, but deep down, he could already feel his frustration bubbling again. Because Kirishima was right about one thing he couldn't forget it. Not Todoroki and Midoriya. Not the kiss, not the way he felt about both of them. And that pissed him off more than anything. Bakugo hit the training ground like a storm. No warm-up, no stretching, just raw, explosive movement. His palms crackled with nitroglycerin as he launched himself at the nearest reinforced dummy, explosions flaring with every strike. Die! He roared, louder than usual, louder than even the concussive blasts echoing off the steel walls. Boom, boom, boom. He didn't hold back. Couldn't. Every blow was a release valve. Every blast, a wordless fury he couldn't put into sentences. His mind swirled with images he couldn't unsee. Todoroki's flame, Deku's flushed face, Kirishima's grin. He screamed again, as if shouting loud enough would burn the thoughts out of his head. He didn't even notice the gym door slide open. Didn't see the teachers walk in. Didn't hear anything at all until the explosions sputtered out suddenly, like a SWCH flipped inside his body. His vision blurred for a second, then sharpened. Aizawa was standing just outside the blast radius, scarf half unraveled and his eyes glowing red. His hair floated from the quirk's activation, calm and unimpressed. Bakugo. Enough. Bakugo blinked, panting hard, sweat clinging to his temples. What the hell? You were too far gone to notice we arrived, Aizawa said, voice flat. You're not training. You're venting. That's fine occasionally. But right now, you need to listen. Bakugo gritted his teeth, but said nothing. The hum of suppressed power still sizzled in his hands. Aizawa continued, not waiting for an argument. We'll be reviewing your special moves today, each of you. We need to assess your progress since the last training CYCL. No exceptions. Bakugo straightened, rolling a shoulder and flexing his fingers. TC fine, he muttered, voice low and sharp. Hope everyone else brought their earplugs. Because he wasn't holding back. Not after this morning. Not with them watching. The moment Bakugo's name was called, he stepped forward like a fuse already lit. No hesitation. No smile. Just a hard, tight glare and a flex of his fingers as sparks danced along his palms. Let's go, Bakugo, Aizawa said simply. TCH, watch closely. He snapped, stalking toward the marked zone of the training field, where jagged boulders and reinforced debris made a controlled chaos playground. Kirishima shot him a thumbs up from the sidelines. "You got this, man." Bakugo didn't respond. He launched himself into the air with a deafening boom, his propulsion slamming the air into a shockwave behind him. Smoke curled from his boots as he spun midair, angled his wrists, and detonated his gauntlets in rapid succession. Faster, tighter, sharper than before. AP, howitzer. He twisted into a spinning dive, explosions accelerating his velocity, until he slammed into the side of the largest boulder with enough force to send a thunderous crack rippling through the stone. The impact shattered the upper half of the formation. But something was off. Cracks spiderwebbed faster than expected. The top of the boulder tilted, slowly at first, then faster, splintering away from the base. Right in the direction where All Might stood at the edge of the safety zone, clipboard in hand. Bakugo's eyes widened. SHD. But before anyone else could move, a green blur cut through the space like lightning. Crack! A shock wave tore through the air as Midoriya slammed her leg, fully charged with one for all, into the falling chunk of rock. The stone exploded into harmless fragments midair, dust cloud billowing behind her as she landed in a crouch, arm raised to shield her face. Silence. Even the wind seemed to pause. All Might blinked. Young Midoriya, that was controlled, Aizawa said, stepping forward, eyes narrowing in rare approval. Better precision. She used only what was needed. Bakugo stood frozen in the middle of the training field, the smoke of his own move still curling behind him. Midoriya slowly stood upright, brushing grit from her knee with one hand, her eyes flicking toward him, uncertain, then soft. All Might walked over to Aizawa, keeping his voice low. "That move, she's been refining it. She's been testing it in secret during her early runs," Aizawa replied. "I told her to hold back until she could land it perfectly. She just did." They both turned to Bakugo, who hadn't moved an inch. He wasn't even looking at the wreckage anymore. His gaze was fixed on her, not in irritation, not in anger, but with something far more dangerous, recognition. She was rising, not just in skill, but in presence, in power, in something unshakable that he could feel in his chest and bones. Her form had changed since their first year, but the weight she carried now was heavier, sharper, brighter. She was becoming something that silenced a room just by standing in it. And for the first time, Bakugo felt it hit him, not like an explosion, but like gravity. Deku's not just catching up anymore. She was pulling ahead. He clenched his fists. She'd always been chasing him with that determined, infuriating look on her face. But now, standing there with the light behind her and power radiating off her frame, it felt reversed. Now, he was the one watching from behind. And DM in it all. He didn't hate it. Didn't hate her. Didn't hate the way his heart kicked hard in his chest when she looked at him like that, like he mattered. Bakugo took a breath, slow and steady. "TCH," he muttered, but there was no venom in it this time. "I ain't letting her stay ahead for long." Kirishima raised a brow. "Is that admiration I hear?" Bakugo snorted. "Hell no. It's motivation." But his eyes stayed on her as she walked back to the sidelines. In the quiet part of his chest, the part he didn't talk about, he admitted what he'd been too stubborn to say for 2 DMN years. Deku's turning into something amazing. Someone worth chasing. And maybe, just maybe, someone worth falling for. Midoriya wiped the sweat from her brow as she walked back to the others, heart still hammering in her chest. Her leg tingled faintly from the impact, just enough to remind her it had worked. For once, everything had aligned: timing, control, strength. The training, the sleepless nights, the quiet rooftop moments, thinking through every adjustment, it all paid off. She could still hear the stones splitting in her ears, the air parting around her kick like a curtain. But more than that, more than the relief or pride, she felt eyes on her. She knew exactly whose they were. She failed. Across the training field, Bakugo hadn't moved. He stood right where he'd landed after his attack, smoke still coiling faintly from his gauntlets. His arms hung at his sides, his expression unreadable. But his eyes, His eyes were fixed on her like she'd just flipped the ground out from under him. Midoriya's breath caught. That look wasn't just surprise. It was something else. Something almost vulnerable. Before she could think too hard about it, Ida jogged up to her, slicing the moment in half with his usual enthusiastic energy. "That was magnificent, Midoriya," he said, pumping his arm. The form, the control, the timing. Truly a demonstration worthy of a hero in training. "Ah, thank you, Ida-kun." She laughed nervously, scratching the back of her neck. I wasn't sure it would actually work in the moment. Well, it did," Uraraka said, joining them with a bright grin. "Seriously, that was cool as hell. I thought the boulder was going to flatten All Might." "I was perfectly fine," All Might said with a smile, waving off the concern, but his eyes twinkled with pride. "Though I'll admit, that kick was faster than expected." "Impressive," Aizawa muttered behind him. "Controlled, too. She didn't even crack the foundation." Midoriya flushed, still a little breathless from all the attention. I've been working on a short-range burst version of shoot style. Less recoil, better angle control. I wanted something I could use when I didn't have room to wind up." Still, she couldn't stop her eyes from drifting back. Bakugo hadn't looked away, and even from across the field, she could tell something had changed between them. Not said aloud, not even close to defined, but there, quiet and building, unspoken and undeniable. Midoriya swallowed hard, a strange flutter tugging low in her stomach. She didn't know what it meant yet, but she knew this, whatever came next, she wasn't running from it. Midoriya tightened the wraps around her hands, her fingers still trembling faintly. Not from fear, not even from the aftershocks of the kick, just the residual pulse of everything. The move, the moment. Him. She shook her head. Focus. The training field had cleared slightly now, the group splitting off into smaller clusters to run individual drills. Bakugo was across the grounds, talking with Kirishima and Kaminari, his back to her. That helped. A little. "All right," Ida called out, adjusting his gloves with mechanical precision. "Let's refine that maneuver, Midoriya." The core movement was excellent, but if you want repeat efficiency, you need muscle memory and stamina. Midoriya smiled, grateful for the shift in tone. "Right. I need to make sure I'm not straining my left side too much when I push off. My knee still twists a little at full speed." "I can help with that," Uraraka offered brightly, bouncing on her heels. "I'll float the boulders back into place between rounds, and I can spot your landings. Might make it easier to readjust between tries." Midoriya beamed. "Thanks, Uraraka. That would really help." They got to work. The next half hour passed in steady rhythm. Midoriya launching forward in a burst of wind and motion, Ida watching her angles like a hawk, and Uraraka resetting the training props with zero-gravity ease. It wasn't just productive, it felt good. Smooth. Supportive. Between rounds, they sprawled on the grass, catching their breath. Warm sunlight spilling through the clouds overhead. "I'm always amazed," Uraraka said, watching a bird soar overhead, "how you two never seem to get tired of improving. You push so hard, even when no one's watching." Midoriya glanced at her, a little sheepish. "I guess I just always think there's more I could be doing. Like, if I stop moving forward, I'll fall behind. Or miss something important." "That's not a bad mindset," Ida said thoughtfully, adjusting his glasses. "But it's important not to let it consume you. Even machines need maintenance time. And you, Midoriya, are no machine." "Definitely not," Uraraka added with a grin. "You cried over a stray dog last week." "It was raining," Midoriya protested, covering her face with both hands as they laughed. He looked so small. Their laughter rang across the field, light and unforced, carried by the breeze like music. And in that moment, Midoriya felt it settle in her chest, quiet but solid. This warmth, this bond, these friends who saw every awkward stutter, every exhausted breath, every frantic scribble in her notebooks, and still stood beside her. They weren't just teammates. They were her anchors. She didn't need to look across the field to know the world was changing. Because right here, laughing breathlessly in the grass, sweat cooling on her brow, sun painting gold across her skin, Midoriya knew she wasn't alone. Whatever came next, She'd have people beside her, and that made all the difference. The dorms were unusually quiet for a Saturday. Most of Class 1A had scattered, some to study, others to blow off steam with video games or rooftop air guitar sessions. But Midoriya found herself in the common area, curled on one of the oversized couches with a blanket over her legs and her provisional exam textbook open on her lap. Her highlighter sat untouched on the cushion beside her, because she couldn't focus. Not really. Her mind kept replaying the looks, the silence, the weight of two boys standing at opposite ends of the room like opposite ends of a magnet, drawn to something between them they hadn't figured out how to name. Bakugo hadn't said a word to her since yesterday's training, but she'd felt him watching. Like every motion she made was under a microscope. And Todoroki, he'd gone quiet, which was normal, but there was something about the quiet now that made it feel deliberate, focused. In her, she had no idea what she was doing or feeling. "You're spiraling," Uraraka said from the other end of the couch, chin propped on her palm. "I can tell by the way your highlighter hasn't moved in 10 minutes. "I'm not spiraling," Midoriya said too quickly. Uraraka raised an eyebrow. She sighed, mentally preparing for the exam or the romantic tension you're stuck in the middle of. Midoriya sputtered. "What?" "Oh, please," Midoriya said, entering the room with a tea tray like a well-timed plot point. "It's not subtle anymore. It's not like that with either of them." "Sure," Uraraka said, grinning. Midoriya buried her face in the blanket. "Please stop talking. It's not a bad thing," Yaoyorozu said gently, setting the tea down. "You've all changed so much. It's natural for dynamics to shift. Feelings, too. Midoriya looked up slowly. "I don't want anything to mess up the exam. Or our team. Or," she hesitated, "what little peace we've managed." The room fell quiet for a beat. Then Uraraka said, "Well, peace was nice while it lasted. But I have a hunch you're heading into a different kind of storm, Deku-chan." Before Midoriya could respond, the front door creaked open. She froze. Bakugo stepped in first, followed by Todoroki, both of them in casual clothes, both of them pausing for a split second when they saw her on the couch. Her heart did a stupid little stutter. "Great," Uraraka muttered under her breath. "Now it's a love triangle in surround sound." Midoriya kicked her under the blanket. "Oi," Bakugo said, tone sharp as ever, but lacking heat. "We're doing strategy review. Common room's fair game." "We weren't stopping you," Yaoyorozu replied smoothly, already gathering her books. "We'll leave you to your extremely important strategies." "Extremely," Uraraka echoed, smirking as she tugged Midoriya's blanket off. "Come on, tea upstairs." Midoriya opened her mouth to protest, but found herself ushered out like luggage. She risked a glance back, just one. Todoroki was watching her. Bakugo wasn't, but she could feel the tension rolling off both of them like pressure before a storm, and she had no idea who or what it would break around first. As they headed toward Yaoyorozu's room, Midoriya felt the weight of every step dragging her deeper into her own thoughts. Her brain had been running in circles since yesterday. Bakugo's silence, Todoroki's glances, the strange, heavy feeling in the air whenever either of them stood too close. She wasn't ready for this, and yet here she was, trapped. Uraraka nudged her playfully as they entered the room. "You look like you're heading into a war zone, not girl talk." Midoriya forced a weak laugh, clutching her notebook to her chest like a shield. I'm tired. That's all." Yaoyorozu raised a delicate brow, already settling on the couch with a cup of tea in her hand. "You're a terrible liar, Midoriya." Uraraka dropped down next to her, eyes glittering with mischief. "We let you off the hook yesterday because you nearly blew up a mountain. But today, no mercy." Midoriya froze. What are you talking about?" "Oh, you know exactly what we're talking about," Uraraka said, pointing at her. "Don't you think we didn't notice the death stare showdown across the common room this morning?" Yaoyorozu set her cup down gently. "It's not just tension, Midoriya. It's energy. Something's changed, and we're not letting you out of this room until you're honest about it." Midoriya's mouth opened, then closed again. Her face went bright red. It's not like that," she said too quickly. They're just intense. About everything. Sure, Uraraka said, grinning. And I casually float 4 inches off the ground whenever I talk to someone I like. Midoriya groaned, dropping her face in her hands. This is a nightmare. It's a safe space, Yaoyorozu corrected gently. But we're not letting you spiral alone. So, tell us, do you like them? Midoriya hesitated. Her heart was pounding like she was about to charge in a battle. I don't know, she whispered. She looked up, eyes wide and scared. I don't think I'm ready to know yet. The room went quiet. Then Uraraka smiled, not teasing this time. That's okay. You don't have to have the answer. But just know, they're not waiting forever. And neither is your heart. Midoriya blinked, overwhelmed. Uraraka immediately flopped onto the bed with a dramatic sigh, limbs splayed like she was settling in for a long night. All right, she said, staring at the ceiling. Let's crack open your heart like a fortune cookie. Midoriya hovered awkwardly at the edge, then slowly sat beside her, her fingers curling around the hem of her hoodie. Yaoyorozu took the armchair by the desk, legs crossed neatly, expression calm but sharp as ever. Before you get overwhelmed again, Momo said gently, folding her hands at her lap, just know this, confusion is a sign that something matters. You don't have to have it all figured out right now. Midoriya blinked at her, caught off guard. Momo tilted her head, voice steady. But confusion gets louder when you keep it inside. Sometimes, saying it out loud is what helps make sense of it. Midoriya stared down at her hands, fidgeting with her sleeves. It's just it feels messy. I don't want to make things worse by dragging them into my own whirlwind. Uraraka turned her head toward her. Midoriya, they're already in it. Whether you talk about it or not doesn't change that. What changes is whether you keep twisting yourself in knots alone or let us untangle it with you. Midoriya laughed, just a little. Nervous. Grateful. I don't even know where to start, she admitted. Yaoyorozu gave a small smile. Start where your heart does. Midoriya sat quiet for a beat, breath shallow. I know they're acting differently. I notice it, Midoriya said, voice low, eyes fixed on the blanket bunched around her fingers. It's just me. I'm the one pretending nothing's changed. Denying it. She took a shaky breath. I'm a guy. Or I was. And now I don't know if I'm feeling things because of how they're acting or because I've changed too. Like, what if these feelings only exist because I'm a girl now? What if it's not real? Momo leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but firm. Whether you're a boy or a girl, you're still you, Midoriya. At your core, your heart didn't magically rewrite itself. And feelings, they aren't less real just because they're complicated. She smiled gently. Even if you confess to Uraraka-chan right now, it wouldn't be weird. You don't stop being yourself just because your body changed. Midoriya turned toward Uraraka, wide-eyed. And Uraraka, cheeks pink but gaze unwavering, just shrugged lightly. Honestly, I like you, Deku. I've liked you for a long time. Since the beginning of school, really. Midoriya's jaw dropped. What? Uraraka laughed softly, rubbing the back of her neck. Yeah, but I never said anything because I kind of knew all you could really give you was friendship. Even now, as a girl, that hasn't really changed. Why you can't just drop that like it's nothing? Midoriya stammered, face burning. That's a huge thing to say. I mean, Uraraka said, smile crooked. But I already accepted it. You've always been worth liking, even if it's not returned the way I hoped. Momo nodded in agreement. See, nothing is wrong with how you feel. The only wrong thing is pretending you don't feel anything at all. Midoriya swallowed hard, her heart thudding against her ribs. She looked between them, two people who saw her, really saw her, and didn't ask her to have it all figured out. Maybe she didn't need answers tonight. Maybe she just needed to be honest. So, Uraraka said, stretching out the word as she propped her chin on her hands, eyes sparkling with mischief. You want to play truth or dare with the boys after lunch? The girls made their way down to the common room few hours after lunch, Midoriya still pink in the cheeks and muttering to herself as Uraraka and Momo walked on either side of her like personal chaos enablers. The lounge was quiet, sunlight streaming through the tall windows. Most of the class had dispersed for the weekend, Some had gone home, others were still out in town. But three familiar figures remained in the center of the room. Ida was seated upright on the couch, dutifully flipping through a manual on provisional license protocols. Kirishima lounged on the rug with a bag of chips, and Todoroki stood nearby with a glass of water, his back partially to them. Midoriya felt her stomach tighten at the sight. Todoroki looked up the moment they entered. His eyes met hers. She looked away first. "Hey guys," Uraraka called, all smiles and sunshine. "Question for you." Kirishima perked up. "Shoot." Momo stepped forward, graceful as always. "We were wondering, since the dorms are quieter this weekend and a good number of our classmates went home, would you three be open to a little group sleepover here in the common room tonight?" Kirishima's eyes lit up instantly. "That sounds awesome. Like a Class 1A bonding thing, right? I'm so in." Ida blinked, adjusting his glasses. "I suppose that could be acceptable, provided we keep the noise levels respectful and observe curfew regulations." All eyes shifted to Todoroki. He paused, gaze lingering on Midoriya for a beat too long. Then he nodded. "Sure, I'll stay." Midoriya felt her heart do an embarrassing little backflip. Uraraka elbowed her discreetly, a grin playing at the corners of her mouth. "Told you this was going to be fun." They then went to every room to announce to whoever is home to join them in the common room for a sleepover. The night started off simple enough. Just a few of them in the common room: Midoriya, Uraraka, Momo, Todoroki, Kirishima, and Ida. Most of Class 1A had gone home or out for the weekend, and somehow that made the dorms feel both quieter and more NTMT, like a secret gathering. Pillows were dragged in, blankets piled up on the floor like a nest. Momo provided snacks, organic of course, while Uraraka brought out a laptop and suggested they vote on a movie. 15 minutes into the film, Hagakure and Tsu wandered in. "Hey," Hagakure chirped, her voice suddenly close. "You guys seriously doing a movie night without us?" Tsu blinked slowly. "We're still here too, Ribbit." "You're absolutely welcome to join," Ida said, already scooting aside to make room on the couch. They were halfway into choosing something when Hagakure groaned, flopping back dramatically. "Okay, but this is so slow. Let's play a game or something. This is a sleepover, not a nursing home." "I vote truth or dare," Uraraka said, already grinning. But Hagakure wrinkled her nose. "Oh, that's so middle school. Come on, be more creative." Midoriya shifted a little on the beanbag, she claimed. "What do you suggest, then?" Hagakure straightened. "Truth or drink?" There was a collective pause. "Absolutely not," Ida said, horrified. "That implies the consumption of alcohol." "There's no alcohol, chill," she said. "We just drink something if we don't want to answer. You know, like weird soda or old tea. Mystery punishment drinks. Keeps it spicy." "I like it," Kirishima nodded. "We can make it super tame. No peer pressure, no actual booze. Just chaos." Todoroki blinked slowly. "Why would we voluntarily drink something unpleasant? To hide secrets," Hagakure grinned. "Obviously." That's when the front door opened. Sato walked in, balancing a grocery bag full of clinking glass bottles and boxes of flour. He looked up surprised. "Oh, didn't know everyone was here. You guys having a thing?" "Sleepover," Momo said with a soft smile. "You're welcome to join. Maybe later." He hoisted the bag. "I just went out to grab some ingredients. I've been trying out some new soda recipes. You know, natural carbonation. Fruit, sugar, a little fermentation, but it's all edible. I think. Probably." He pulled out a bottle with a pale pink hue and popped the cap with a satisfying hiss. "This one's cherry pineapple." "That smells incredible," Uraraka said, already grabbing a cup. "Yeah," Midoriya added, holding hers out. "You made this yourself." "Total experiment," Sato said proudly. "Don't know if it'll be gross or genius." Hagakure opened one. "Perfect. This'll be our drink punishment. Bring out the other flavors." "I have mango citrus and that one that turned out kind of fizzy on accident," Sato said, setting the bottles down with a grin. Ida hesitated. "As long as it's all non-alcoholic, it's soda, Four Eyes." "Chill," Hagakure cut in. "Okay, who's first?" And with that, the movie was forgotten. The lights dimmed. The cups were filled. And the game began, just a bunch of friends playing truth or drink with experimental homemade soda. What could possibly go wrong? The tea table was dragged into the center of the common room with minimal effort and maximum noise, mostly from Kirishima, who stubbed his toe and tried to pass it off like nothing happened. Momo, ever the perfectionist, created a matching set of delicate shot glasses from her body with a soft pop of creation smoke. If we're committing to the vibe, we might as well make it feel a little classy. Sato wandered in just as she was placing the glasses around the table, holding a small paper bag of groceries and a few unlabeled bottles filled with pale, fizzy liquid. "Yo," he said, "I was messing with fruit juice and sugar ratios for a baking thing, and this stuff came out kind of interesting. It's super sweet, kind of fizzy. Enjoy your game night." Uraraka peered at one of the bottles. "It's bubbling." "Yeah, I think the fruit did something. Just an experiment, nothing fancy," Sato said, shrugging as he placed the bottles in the middle of the table. "Anyway, I'm heading upstairs. You guys have fun." And with that, he turned and left, completely unaware of what he'd just unleashed. "Okay, I like this," Hagakure said, already popping one bottle open and pouring the sparkling liquid into a shot glass. "This is a whole mood." "It looks like soda," Midoriya said cautiously as she sniffed the glass. "Smells sweet." So nodded once, slowly. "Suspiciously sweet. Which makes it perfect for a game night," Hagakure declared, grabbing a shoebox from beside the couch. "Everyone write down truth questions and fold them up. We'll pull from the box, and everyone has to answer the question or drink." "And how do we decide who goes first?" Kirishima asked, already digging through his pockets for a pen. "I brought color sticks," Momo said calmly, pulling a small glass jar from her bag. "Whoever draws red goes first," and they picked the first question. Of course, Momo had a system. They each picked a stick. Midoriya peeked at hers, blue. Sue had green. Uraraka groaned softly. "Red," Todoroki said calmly, holding up the short crimson stick. "Of course," Hagakure said gleefully. "All right, pretty boy, you're up." Todoroki pulled a slip from the box and read it silently, then blinked once. "Who in this room do you find most attractive?" Midoriya's spine stiffened, like someone pulled a string through her. Todoroki looked around slowly, the flicker of a smirk ghosting at the corner of his mouth. "Midoriya," he said plainly. Midoriya's soul nearly evacuated. "What?" she stammered. "You asked." Todoroki shrugged, pouring himself a drink and sipping calmly. "Honesty's the point, right?" Uraraka had to stuff her face into a pillow to muffle her snort. Kirishima grinned wide. Sue just blinked, unfazed. Now it was Midoriya's turn to answer. She swallowed hard, cheeks blazing. I'll drink." She reached for the soda, poured a shot, and knocked it back. The syrupy sweetness hit first. Then a weird fizzy bite crawled up her nose and into her skull. Her face scrunched. "That's weirdly strong," she muttered. "Fruit sugar," Hagakure said dismissively. "Drink more, think less." One by one, they all answered or took a drink. Some answers were awkward, some teasing, some surprisingly honest. The questions grew bolder, the laughter came easier, cheeks flushed, and no one noticed the bottle on the table was doing more than just sweetening their drinks. The sleepover had officially begun, and beneath the giggles and teasing, something unspoken began to unravel. Something sweet and dangerous. Round 2. Hagakure cheered, sitting cross-legged with a mischievous bounce. "Let's spice it up." Momo reached for the next stick. She drew it slowly, unfolded the slip of paper, and blinked. She read aloud, voice even but just a little higher than usual. "Who in this room hides their feelings the most?" The group quieted. Eyes darted, some toward Midoriya, some toward Todoroki, and at least one toward Bakugo's usual spot on the couch, even if he wasn't there. Momo hesitated. Then, without saying a word, she reached for one of the tiny shot glasses and took a polite sip of Sato's soda experiment. "I think I'll pass." "I knew this game was a good idea," Hagakure said smugly, clearly pleased. "My turn," Sue said, drawing her stick calmly. She unfolded it, read it, and blinked once. "Would you ever date someone in this room if they confessed right now?" The room went still. Uraraka, made a tiny squeak and hid behind her hands. Kirishima coughed into his arm. Midoriya's heart absolutely skipped a beat. Some of them immediately got the shot glass and drank. Sue tilted her head thoughtfully, then lifted a shot glass and sipped. No comment. What? Sue? Uraraka gasped, half laughing, half scandalized. I value peace, she said with a shrug, putting her glass down like it was tea. Kirishima went next. His question, who do you think has the biggest crush in this room? Bruh, he said immediately, eyes wide, holding the paper like it was cursed. You're trying to get me murdered. He knocked back a full shot. The others laughed. Midoriya, half nervous, half distracted by the growing flush in her cheeks that was definitely not from embarrassment alone. Hagakure smirked. That's 3 drinks in a row. Y'all are soft. You're next then, Momo said, nudging the box forward. Hagakure didn't hesitate. She picked a stick, unfolded it, and read, Name your weirdest crush ever. Oh, easy, she said. That's a freebie. There was a time I was super into present mic. I think it was the jacket. Everyone groaned. Uraraka dropped back on the couch laughing, and Ida turned visibly pale. I do not need that mental image, he stammered. And yet it's there, Hagakure said smugly. Midoriya giggled behind her hand. Ida, now bright red, reluctantly reached for his stick. Let's get this over with. He opened the paper and froze. If you had to date someone in this room, who would it be? Oh no, Midoriya whispered. This is not. Ida's glasses fogged. I respectfully declined to answer. He tossed back a drink in one swift motion, grimacing at the sweetness. That's 4 drinks now, Uraraka said, her grin spreading. If this is how round 2 is going, round 3 is going to be chaos. And behind them, the bottle on the table gleamed innocently, its effects still subtle. For now, the bottle caught the light as Hagakure reached into the box again, pulling out a new question with a sly grin. She read it aloud, voice playful but loaded with mischief. If you could swap quirks with anyone here for a whole day, no questions asked, who would you pick and what's the first thing you'd do with it? The room shifted instantly, eyes flickering between each other with a mix of surprise, excitement, and that unmistakable spark of, oh, this is going to get interesting. Uraraka grinned. I'd totally take Todoroki's quirk. Fire and ice. That's just insane. First thing, probably make a snow cone with actual fire for extra flavor. Kirishima laughed, slapping his knee. No way I'm passing this. I want to try Tsu's frog quirk. Imagine leaping off buildings and sticking to walls. First thing, I'd climb to the top of UA and shout at everyone. Tsu shrugged, smiling faintly. I think Ida's quirk could be interesting. The speed, I try to get everything done faster for once. Ida adjusted his glasses, faced the color of a tomato. That is reckless. But if I had to choose, maybe Momo's creation quirk. I'd carefully create supplies for training. Momo smiled thoughtfully. I'd be curious about Midoriya's. The power she channels, it's incredible. I want to see if I could handle that responsibility. Midoriya's breath caught. Wow, that's a lot of pressure. Hagakure bounced in her seat. I want to try Uraraka's zero gravity. First thing, I'd float around the room like a balloon and prank everyone. Todoroki's smirk deepened. Ida's speed sounds efficient. I'd finish training early. Midoriya giggled nervously. I think I'd like to try Hagakure's invisibility. Sneaking around sounds fun, but maybe a little scary. The question hung in the air, charged with laughter and unspoken thoughts. Then, with a sly grin, Hagakure said, All right, if anyone doesn't want to answer, drink up. Not a single one hesitated. The sleepover game was heating up, and no one wanted to miss a beat. Hagakure pulled the next slip from the box, eyes sparkling with mischief. She read it loud and clear. If you had to pick one person here for a midnight kiss, no questions asked, who would it be? The room froze. Eyes locked, cheeks flushed. Without hesitation, Kirishima's grin broke out, wide as the sun. Midoriya. The silence shattered. Uraraka's mouth dropped open so fast she nearly spilled her drink. What? Midoriya. Todoroki's brows shot up, clearly caught off guard. Kirishima, what? Kirishima shrugged, like it was the most casual thing in the world. I kissed her already. The room exploded. Uraraka squealed, nearly falling off the couch. When? Sue blinked twice, eyes wide but cool. Excuse me. Ida's glasses fogged up so hard he had to adjust them twice. Kirishima. Midoriya's face was hotter than a furnace, and she shook her head furiously. It was just on the forehead, I swear. Kirishima winked, leaning toward her with a sly smile. Well, do you want to make it on the lips next time? Midoriya nearly fainted on the spot. She squeaked, covering her face, but there was no hiding the smile. Uraraka started giggling uncontrollably, clutching her stomach. Oh my gosh, Kirishima. You smooth talker, you. Hagakure was practically bouncing with glee. OMG, this game just exploded. This is so much better than I thought. Sue let out a quiet, surprised laugh. I underestimated this game's potential. Ida coughed, flustered beyond belief. I need water. Midoriya blinked and tried to focus, but the warm fuzziness spreading in her chest and the light dizziness swirling around her told a different story. Is it just me, or is Sato's soda really kicking in? Kirishima laughed, voice a little softer and breathier. Yeah, everything feels warmer and way funnier. Uraraka nodded, voice sweet and shaky. My cheeks hurt from smiling already. Hagakure clapped gleefully. This is going to be insane. Bring on the chaos. The bottle on the table gleamed innocently, but no one was fooled anymore. The room buzzed with energy after Kirishima's bombshell, but Hagakure was already reaching for the box again. All right, your turn. Uraraka, spill it or sip it. Uraraka swallowed hard, cheeks still glowing. She glanced around, took a deep breath, and said, I'd pick Kirishima. Her voice was soft, shy, but there was no denying the smile tugging at her lips. Kirishima grinned, ear to ear, and gave her a thumbs up. Next was Tsu, calm as ever, but with a flicker of something mischievous in her eyes. She unwrapped her slip, read quietly, then said, I pick Midoriya. Midoriya nearly melted into her seat. Tsu, you're serious. Tsu simply nodded serenely, taking a delicate sip of the soda afterward. Ida's turn. He looked like he was about to protest, but then took a deep breath. I will respectfully decline. He promptly downed a shot of the sweet fizz, eyes watering. Hagakure giggled. All right, Ida, playing it safe. But you're next. Momo's turn came, and she glanced around thoughtfully before answering. I choose Kirishima. Kirishima's grin grew wider, and he raised his glass in a silent toast. That left toe looked at the question, then the group, then said in a clipped voice, I'll pass. With calm precision, he knocked back a shot without hesitation, then leaned back, expression unreadable. Midoriya snickered softly. Todoroki's playing it cool. Hagakure bounced excitedly. 3 sips, 2 passes, 1 blushy confession. I love it. The warmth of the soda bloomed in their chests, laughter growing louder, words coming looser. By now, their little circle had sprawled wider across the floor. Blankets were bunched, pillows scattered, and Sato soda had been refilled twice, each time sweeter, fizzier, and way too easy to sip without realizing how warm it made your face feel. Momo's braid had come undone. Todoroki was no longer sitting perfectly upright. Even Tsu looked more relaxed than usual, one arm draped over a beanbag. Hagakure shook the shoebox dramatically. Okay. Next question is one of mine. I know because I folded it like a taco. She pulled it out, unfolded it, and read aloud with wicked glee. Who's someone here you'd want to have 7 minutes in heaven with? Midoriya choked on her drink. Oh my God, Uraraka whispered, pulling a pillow in front of her face. Momo coughed once, delicately. That's bold. Kirishima was already laughing. Okay, this one's dangerous. Which means we have to answer, Hagakure grinned. Unless you're going to drink. She pointed dramatically. Kirishima, you're up first. He didn't hesitate. Midoriya, a beat of stunned silence. Midoriya stared at him, bright red. Wah, you can't just keep saying my name. Why not? He asked, leaning toward her a little too smoothly for someone who was usually sunshine and biceps. We already established I give great forehead kisses. Wanna upgrade? Kiri, she squeaked. The group lost it. Uraraka was practically crying into her blanket. I can't. This is too much. I'm ascending. Todoroki, eyes a little unfocused, took a slow sip of his drink. That was bold, he murmured. His expression didn't change, but he was watching Midoriya like she might sprout wings. All right, lover boy, sit down, Hagakure said between giggles. Sue, you're next. Sue blinked, tilted her head, and sipped her drink without a word. Oh, she's taking her secrets to the grave, Uraraka teased. I value privacy, Sue said serenely, though her cheeks were lightly pink. Midoriya, Hagakure pointed. Your turn, Miss Popular. Midoriya made a noise halfway between a whimper and a scream. I'm drinking. I'm drinking so hard. She poured a shot and downed it, blinking hard as the sweetness smacked her in the mouth. Why is it fizzy and mean? She muttered, and Kirishima helpfully added, because it's honest. Okay, Hagakure wheezed. Uraraka peeked over her pillow. I'm gonna say, Kaminari, she whispered. They all paused. He's not even here. Momo said, shocked. Exactly. Uraraka giggled, curling deeper into the pillow. Todoroki lifted his paper like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He looked at it, then at the group. Then he said, deadpan, I'm drinking, but only because the question is unnecessary. Suspicious, Hagakure declared. I am exercising my right to mystery, he replied. Momo looked like she wanted to vanish. I don't think I should say anything that could be misinterpreted. Drink, Kirishima and Uraraka said in unison. Momo sighed and took a dainty sip. Then all eyes turned to Hagakure herself. She smiled, clearly pleased with the chaos she caused. What? I'm not a coward. She lifted her chin. I'd pick Todoroki. He blinked. Oh, you've got mystery in the hair thing, she said with a shrug. I respect that. He tilted his head. Thank you. Laughter erupted again. The tension had shifted, still light, still funny, but buzzing now, just under the surface. Something electric, something a little bit reckless. And the soda bottle on the table. Still full, still glowing, like it knew what was coming next. Laughter was still echoing around the room when Ida, who had been quiet for the last few minutes, sitting very, very straight with his eyes blinking a little too slowly, finally cleared his throat. I believe, he said with great seriousness, that I may be experiencing the early signs of cranial destabilization. English, bro, Kirishima grinned. My head is doing a spin, Ida said, carefully enunciating each word. There was a beat of silence. Then Uraraka howled with laughter, nearly falling off the pillow pile. Head is doing a spin. I can't. Ida, Momo said gently, reaching over to pat his shoulder. You should go lie down. Yes, I believe that is wise. I shall take my leave before I begin to hallucinate unauthorized slumber parties in the corridor. Too late. You're in one, Hagakure snorted. Ida stood, a bit wobbly, and gave the most awkward, formal bow any of them had ever seen. It has been an honor. Enjoy your 7 minutes in beverage-induced nonsense. Night, Ida. Don't fall down the stairs. Tell the walls to stop moving. He blinked at them once more, nodded with exaggerated care, and shuffled out of the common room like a very tired robot. The second the door clicked shut, Hagakure threw her hands in the air. All right, the responsible adult has left the building, which means dare or drink, baby. Cheers and groans echoed around the room. Kirishima immediately rubbed his hands together. Oh no, Midoriya whispered, already giggling. Oh yes, Hagakure grinned. We're doing this. The bottle gleamed in the middle of them, half empty now, and definitely not just soda. And outside, somewhere in the quiet dark of Heights Alliance, the stars twinkled like they were in on the joke. The second Lita's footsteps faded. Hagakure slammed the soda bottle onto the floor. Rules are simple: spin the bottle. If it lands on you, you pick dare or drink. But, she wagged a finger. If you chicken out of dare, you take 2 shots. Kirishima cracked his knuckles. Oh, we're cooked. The first spin landed on Uraraka. Dare, she declared, grinning. Hagakure's grin turned feral. put on Kirishima's jacket, and say, "No." Yell "I am the captain now" in his face. Kirishima immediately shucked off his cropped hoodie. Uraraka snatched it, climbed onto the coffee table, and bellowed, "I'm the captain now," nearly kneeing Todoroki in the nose. The room exploded with cheers. Kirishima burst out laughing, holding his hands up in surrender. "Aye, Captain." Uraraka flexed in his jacket like she was about to commandeer a pirate ship, then dropped back onto the couch with a wild giggle, face flushed. "Solid start," Hagakure declared. "We're setting the bar high." She spun the bottle next. It made a few wobbly turns, then stopped with the neck pointing directly at Todoroki. Everyone turned to him. He blinked. "There," he said calmly. Hagakure clasped her hands. "Ooh, okay. I dare you to serenade the person to your left with a love song, while maintaining unbroken eye contact." Todoroki turned slightly. The person to his left was Midoriya. Midoriya nearly fell off the beanbag. What? Kirishima slapped a hand over his mouth to muffle his cackle. Todoroki stared at her, perfectly still. Then he opened his mouth and started humming something that sounded suspiciously like a slow, off-key version of Beyoncé's Halo, with deadpan intensity, while never breaking eye contact. Midoriya looked like she was experiencing a full software crash. "Oh my God," Uraraka wheezed. Midoriya said faintly, "I can't breathe." Emotionally stirring, Tsu croaked, actually smiling. When Todoroki finally stopped, he blinked once and said, "That was the only song I could remember." The room howled. Midoriya just buried her face in a blanket and tried to reboot her brain. "Okay," Kirishima gasped, wiping a tear. "My turn." He spun the bottle with dramatic flair. It clinked and spun across the wooden floor until it pointed squarely at Momo. "Oh no," she whispered. "Dare or drink?" Kirishima asked, his voice a little too excited. Momo sat straighter, cheeks pink but defiant. "Dare." "Yes," he hissed. "Okay. I dare you to call Aizawa-sensei and tell him you accidentally dyed your hair neon pink and need advice." Momo's soul visibly left her body. I could never." "Come on, Yamamo," Hagakure teased. "Rules are rules." "I'll take the shots," she said quickly, already reaching for the bottle. They counted her down. 1, 2. Momo winced and tossed back the first shot, shivering. "Why is this fizzy?" "Because it's demon juice," Uraraka said helpfully. The second one had her blinking hard and fanning her face. "I feel warm," she murmured. "Me too," Kirishima grinned. "This game rules." Midoriya was still trying to recover from the impromptu love ballad, her head spinning in a very different way now. "You're up next, Midoriya," Hagakure sang, already spinning the bottle. It twirled once, twice, then landed squarely on her. Everyone sat forward. Midoriya's eyes were glassy with nervous laughter and the slow, sweet buzz of whatever Sato had brewed. "Dare," she said softly. Hagakure leaned in, grinning like a gremlin. "I dare you to let Kirishima sit behind you and give you a dramatic movie trailer-style monologue about your hero career while holding your shoulders like a coach." Kirishima's eyes lit up. "Oh, hell yes." Midoriya yelped as he scrambled behind her, planted both hands on her shoulders like they were in a training montage, and bellowed in the deepest voice he could manage. "This summer. One girl, one quirk, one dream to smash the odds with Smash." Uraraka yelled. Kirishima kept going. No fear, no sleep, just abs. And crying. But mostly abs. Midoriya was absolutely crying from laughter now. Tsu was recording on her phone. Momo had fallen over sideways on a pillow. Hagakure slammed her hand down. Next round. Next victim. The bottle spun again. Todoroki was next. "Drink," he said. "Boo." Kirishima threw a pillow at him. Todoroki sipped, then blinked. "This is just juice." "Liar," Hagakure gasped. "That's Sato's moonshine." Todoroki frowned. "Tastes like melon." Midoriya, cheeks flushed, launched herself across the circle to grab the bottle. Let me see." She took a swig and immediately gagged. "Todoroki," Your taste buds are broken. That's gasoline dash. The bottle spun again. Midoriya. Dare, she slurred, swaying. Hagakura's eyes gleamed. Sit in someone's lap for the next 3 rounds. Midoriya blinked. Then, with zero hesitation, she crawled into Kirishima's lap and flung her arms around his neck. You're warm, she announced. Kirishima turned scarlet. Oh. Uraraka wheezed. She's possessed. No, she's evolved, Sue said, sipping her drink. The bottle landed on Momo. Dare, she said, chin high, then hiccuped. Hagakure whispered the dare to Kirishima, who howled. You gotta give Todoroki a lap dance. Momo's soul left her body. I'll drink. Thrice. She grabbed the bottle and chugged, then immediately slumped against Sue, giggling. I'm so glad Lita left. Sue's turn. There, she said. Hagakure pointed at the ceiling. Hang upside down off the couch and confess one secret. Sue hooked her knees over the armrest, dangling like a bat. I did cheat on the chemistry midterm. Sue, it was Uraraka's idea. Uraraka gasped, betrayed. Frog traitor dash. Hey, that's racist. Sue said jokingly. The bottle spun Kirishima. Dare, he said, grinning down at Midoriya, still in his lap. Hagakure leaned in. Kiss someone here. Anywhere. The room hushed. Kirishima looked at Midoriya. Midoriya looked at Kirishima. Then, forehead kisses don't count this time. Hagakure yelled. Kirishima cupped Midoriya's face and booped her nose with his. There. Technically a kiss. Midoriya squeaked, then tackled him into the pillows. Cheater. The game dissolved into laughter, limbs, and half-hearted wrestling until the soda ran dry and the sky turned pale. Somewhere along the way, Todoroki actually smiled. Momo braided Hagakure's hair, badly, and Uraraka passed out using Kirishima's abs as a pillow. And Midoriya, she spun one last time, missed the bottle entirely, and face-planted into the carpet. I'm invincible, she mumbled, before promptly snoring. Todoroki exhaled slowly, the weight of the night settling over him like a blanket. Everyone was out cold, or very close to it. Midoriya still lay, face down on the carpet, arms spread like a fallen hero mid-battle. Her curls were a mess, cheeks flushed pink from the sugar wine, and there was a faint smile tugging at her lips even in sleep. Kirishima was only half-conscious beside her, blinking slowly as if trying to remember where he was. Todoroki moved quietly. First, he grabbed the blanket hanging off the couch and draped it over Hagakure and Momo, who had both slumped sideways into each other. One of Momo's braids was still tangled in the couch cushion, and he gently freed it without waking her. Uraraka had ended up on Kirishima's stomach. Somehow, he carefully lifted her off and settled her against the beanbag, tucking a hoodie around her shoulders before stepping back to survey the battlefield of bodies and soda cans. Then his eyes landed on Midoriya again. He crouched beside her, fingers brushing her hair back from her face. She didn't stir. It should have made him smile, seeing her like this. Relaxed, happy, safe, but something twisted in his chest. Kirishima had kissed her earlier. Not on the lips, sure, but close enough. And the way she'd thrown herself into his lap, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Todoroki wasn't stupid. They were flirting, and it wasn't the playful kind. Not just a game. His jaw tightened slightly. The feeling blooming in his stomach was unfamiliar, sharp and warm and sour all at once. He didn't mind Kirishima. In fact, he respected him a lot. That didn't make it easier to watch. Still, he couldn't be upset. Not really. Midoriya had laughed tonight. Really laughed. She'd been flushed and wild and free, and it was like watching sunlight break through a storm. How could he resent that? Todoroki sighed again and shifted Midoriya gently on her side, sliding a pillow under her head. She mumbled something unintelligible and curled into the blanket without opening her eyes. Kirishima had fallen fully asleep now, one hand still draped in Midoriya's direction, fingers brushing the edge of her sleeve. Todoroki stood. He grabbed a trash bag, quietly started picking up the empties and snack wrappers, folding jackets over chairs, collecting the scattered color sticks. He glanced over his shoulder one last time, at Midoriya's peaceful face, at the quiet pile of his friends, and let a rare, fleeting smile touch his lips. "I'm glad you're happy," he murmured, mostly to himself. Then he turned, padded to the door, and shut it gently behind him. It was midnight already. The dorms were quiet now, save for the faint static hum of the common room TV and the soft snoring drifting from tangled limbs and pillows. Todoroki stepped out into the hallway, the door closing gently behind him. His shirt smelled vaguely like soda and someone's cherry lip balm, probably Midoriya's. He was exhausted but wired. The elevator dinged just as he approached. The door slid open, and out stepped Bakugo. Hoodie half-zipped, eyes sharp despite the tousled hair. He froze when he saw Todoroki, brows already lowering. "What the hell happened?" Bakugo asked, voice low and suspicious. Todoroki simply gestured behind him, toward the dimly lit common room. "The group decided to have a game night," he said. "There was drinking. Technically." Bakugo's eyes narrowed. "Technically. Sato made something he called soda," Todoroki said, rubbing the back of his neck. "It wasn't soda. You mean that sugary death brew?" Todoroki nodded. "Yes, that one." Bakugo stepped forward, peering past him. His sharp gaze caught the remnants of chaos. Hagakure curled in a blanket with Momo's lopsided braid flopping over one eye. Uraraka passed out with her leg half off the couch, and Midoriya in a heap of blankets, her head still half buried in Kirishima's hoodie. Bakugo's stare sharpened. Why the hell is she in his hoodie? Todoroki was quiet for a beat too long. They were flirting. A lot. Bakugo slowly turned to him. "Flirting?" Very loudly, Todoroki added, poker-faced. Bakugo's eye twitched. "The hell does that mean?" Todoroki exhaled through his nose, gaze drifting for a moment. She crawled into his lap, called him warm. He kissed her nose. Bakugo blinked like he'd just been slapped. "Technically a dare," Todoroki added, not that it helped. Bakugo was silent, jaw tight, his fists curled in his hoodie pocket. Todoroki glanced at him and then away. Jealousy twisted sharp in his gut, not because of Bakugo, but because of the whole dim-in night. He'd sat there watching Midoriya laugh and tease and lean into Kirishima like she didn't carry the world on her back. And despite the ache it caused, he couldn't be upset. She'd looked free, and Todoroki didn't want to take that from her. "She looked happy," he said aloud, quiet but firm. Bakugo didn't respond right away. His expression was unreadable, eyes shadowed under the low dorm lighting. "Good," Bakugo finally muttered. "She deserves that." It surprised Todoroki, just for a moment. But then again, maybe it didn't. The silence stretched a beat longer. "I'm going to get water," Todoroki said. Bakugo grunted. "I'll make sure no one's face plants into the couch again." Todoroki nodded once, then stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding closed between them. And back in the common room, Midoriya mumbled something in her sleep and curled tighter into Kirishima's hoodie. The elevator doors hadn't even fully closed when Todoroki pressed the button to stop at mid-floor. He stood there for a second, arms folded, gaze steady. Then he sighed and stepped back out. Bakugo hadn't moved from the common room entrance. His arms were crossed now, shoulders tense, eyes still locked on the half-lit mess of classmates. Midoriya stirred a little in the pile of blankets, murmured something incomprehensible, and didn't even lift her head from where it rested against Kirishima's hoodie. Todoroki came to stand beside Bakugo again. "I saw your face, you know," he said casually. Bakugo scoffed. "The hell does that mean?" "You got jealous." Todoroki's voice was calm, matter of fact. "When I told you about Midoriya and Kirishima, your eye twitched. Twice." Bakugo's jaw clenched. "Oh, so now you're a DMN body language expert." Todoroki didn't respond, just gave him a slow look as if to say, "Am I wrong?" Bakugo let the silence stretch, then huffed sharply and rubbed his forehead. "As if you weren't jealous too, pretty boy." Todoroki blinked. He didn't even try to deny it. "I was," he admitted quietly. Bakugo glanced at him, almost surprised by the honesty. "She was," Todoroki paused, searching, "carefree, happy. I haven't seen her like that in a long time." After the accident, she became more aloof. Bakugo's jaw worked again. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low. She used to be like that when we were kids. Loud, stubborn, always chasing after me like a dumbass with scraped knees and no self-preservation. He exhaled, a ghost of something bitter in the breath. I thought I broke that. Todoroki tilted his head. You won't. She's stronger than that. Bakugo didn't answer, just stared at the girl in question, now drooling slightly into Kirishima's hoodie. Dumbass, he muttered. They stood there a moment longer, side by side in the low light, watching the aftermath of the night's chaos. Tipsy confessions, bad dares, quiet laughter that had softened the edges of things usually sharp. She's important to you, Todoroki said simply. Yeah. Bakugo's voice was low. And to you. Another beat of silence passed. Then, without looking at each other, both of them gave almost the same defeated sigh. We're screwed, Bakugo said. Yeah, Todoroki quietly agreed. From the couch, Midoriya snored softly and kicked at the air. Bakugo shook his head and turned to go fill a water bottle from the kitchen. Todoroki walked back into the common room to gently tuck a throw blanket around Momo's legs. Neither of them said anything else, but something had quietly shifted. And in the silence of midnight, beneath the faint hum of the lights, the dorms held the weight of it. Bakugo stared at the couch pile for another long moment, then exhaled through his nose. This is pathetic. Todoroki raised an eyebrow. You mean adorable. Shut up. Bakugo set the water glass down and stepped around to snoring Tsu. We should put them in their rooms. They're going to wake up with sore backs and necks, and someone's definitely going to drool on my couch. Todoroki nodded. Agreed. Who first? Bakugo motioned at Uraraka, who was starfished over a beanbag with one sock missing and a chocolate wrapper on her forehead. Floaty. She looks the lightest. Todoroki gently picked her up bridal style, while Bakugo cleared a path to the girl's dorm wing. Uraraka mumbled something about broccoli and passed right back out as Todoroki tucked her in, pulling the covers over her. Next was Tsu, who woke just enough to croak a sleepy, thank you, as Bakugo awkwardly carried her like a gym bag and deposited her on her bed. They worked down the line. Momo and Hagakure were next, half-conscious and giggly as they were hauled to their rooms with many whispered, I'm not drunk, and one slurred, we should do this weekly. When it came to Kirishima and Midoriya, though, both boys paused. Midoriya was still curled around Kirishima like a koala, her hair a frizzy mess against his chest. Kirishima was snoring, but with a faint smile on his face that made Bakugo twitch. I'll take him, Bakugo muttered, already crouching down. You get her. Todoroki blinked. You trust me to carry Midoriya. Bakugo's voice was low. I trust you not to drop her. There was something heavy in that statement. Something that, for once, neither of them tried to dodge. With a grunt, Bakugo slung Kirishima over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Dumbass sleeps like a log, he muttered. Todoroki moved more carefully. He slipped an arm beneath Midoriya's knees and another behind her back. She stirred slightly, groggy eyes blinking up at him. Midoriya stirred against his shoulder, warm and pliant. Her fingers curled weakly into the front of his shirt. Roki, she mumbled. I've got you, he said softly. She tilted her head up, blinking sleepily at him through lashes that were pink, not just from the drink, but from everything. From laughter, from the things she said, from what she didn't say. You're cold, she whispered, voice lazy. And warm. Todoroki chuckled under his breath. You're not bad yourself. By the time they reached her room, her eyes had fluttered closed again. Todoroki nudged the door open with his foot, stepping inside the familiar space. Soft colors, a few All Might posters, notebooks in neat stacks by the desk. He set her down on the bed as gently as he could. Midoriya curled into the blankets automatically, sighing as her body sank into the mattress. But before he could step back, her hand reached for his sleeve. Wait, she said, voice suddenly more alert. Just one thing. He paused. She sat up slowly, wobbling a little, and opened the drawer beside her bed. She pulled out a small folded slip of paper and handed it to him. Todoroki opened it. Who is the most attractive person here? It was her handwriting. From earlier. I wanted to keep it. Midoriya said, eyes flicking up to meet his. Because when you said it was me, I thought maybe it was just a joke or like something you had to say because of the game. But she hesitated. Todoroki waited. I think you're really attractive too, she said softly, cheeks darkening. I've thought that for a while. You just never said anything. So I figured I was the only one. The breath caught in his throat. Midoriya, she shook her head, eyes suddenly shy. You don't have to say anything. I wanted to be honest. Since I didn't answer that question earlier. Her voice cracked a little as she added, can I have a hug? Just one. So I know it wasn't just in my head. Todoroki stepped forward without hesitation. He wrapped his arms around her, pulled her in close, and held her. Her forehead rested against his chest. His chin brushed her hair. You weren't imagining anything, he said quietly. She held on just a little longer than he expected. Then, finally she let go. Good night, Todoroki. Good night, Midoriya. As he stepped out of her room, still holding the folded slip of paper in one hand, Todoroki couldn't stop the faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Deku Became a Girl. We hope you found it as captivating as we did. A big thank you to aywashe for creating such an engaging story. Don't forget to visit their profile on archiveofourown.org for more fantastic works. The link is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Zenin Fanfics for more intriguing explorations into fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we love hearing your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. See you soon in the next video.